When Elena Carter sees Victor Moreau walk through the diner door after 7 months of hiding, her hand instinctively moves to her swollen belly, carrying the secret she swore he'd never discover. But the moment their eyes meet across the fluorescent-lit room, she knows. Her carefully constructed disappearance means nothing anymore. The most dangerous man she's ever loved has found her, and he's already staring at the unmistakable evidence of what she's been hiding. In the next 2 hours, you'll witness a collision between survival and surrender, between running and reckoning. Stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far Elena's story travels across the world. The overhead lights in Rosie's diner hummed with that particular frequency that vibrated somewhere behind Elena Carter's temples, a low, persistent buzz that had become the soundtrack to her exhaustion. She'd been on her feet for 6 hours straight, the kind of shift that made her lower back scream and her ankles swell until her secondhand sneakers felt like tourniquets. But she couldn't afford to complain. She couldn't afford anything, really, except to keep moving. 7 months pregnant and invisible. That was Elena's strategy. She'd perfected the art of being nobody, of blending into the background so completely that customers looked right through her when they ordered their coffee and pie. It was safer that way. Safer than the life she'd left behind. The dinner rush had finally thinned to just a handful of stragglers. A trucker nursing his third cup of coffee at the counter, a young couple sharing a milkshake in the corner booth, and old Mr. Henderson, who came in every Thursday for the meatloaf special. Elena moved through her section with mechanical efficiency, clearing plates, refilling drinks, smiling just enough to earn decent tips, but not enough to invite conversation. Her hands were deep in soapy water at the service station when she heard it, the bright chime of the entrance bell. She didn't look up. She'd learned not to. In 7 months of working at Rosie's, she'd trained herself to anticipate every sound without reacting, to maintain her camouflage through pure discipline. But something made her pause. Maybe it was the sudden silence that fell over the diner, the way conversation seemed to catch mid-sentence. Maybe it was the prickle at the base of her neck, that ancient instinct that warns of predators even when you can't see them yet. Elena lifted her gaze to the mirror behind the counter, the one that gave her a fisheye view of the entire dining room, and felt her heart stop. Victor Moreau stood in the doorway like he owned the place, like he owned everything. He hadn't changed, not really. The same dark hair swept back from a face that looked carved from granite and shadows. The same immaculate suit that probably cost more than she'd make in a year. The same presence that made the air feel heavier, denser, charged with something dangerous and electric. But it was his eyes that destroyed her. Those ice blue eyes that had once looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Eyes that had consumed her completely, possessed her, promised her everything, and delivered only beautiful devastation. Those eyes found hers in the mirror, and held. Elena's wet hands gripped the edge of the sink. "Run!" her mind screamed. "Run right now." But her feet had turned to lead, her body betraying her with its absolute stillness. She watched in the mirror as Victor's gaze traveled slowly, deliberately downward, to her profile, to the unmistakable swell of her belly beneath the ugly polyester uniform. She saw the exact moment he understood. His entire body went rigid, his jaw tightened, and something flickered across his face that she'd never seen before, complete unguarded shock. "Elena." His voice cut through the diner like a blade through silk. Every head turned. The trucker's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. The young couple stopped mid-giggle. Even Rosie, flipping burgers in the kitchen, went quiet. Elena forced herself to turn, to face him directly, even though every instinct screamed to bolt. She raised her chin, a gesture of defiance that felt hollow when her hands were shaking. "You need to leave. We need to talk." Victor moved forward, and the diner seemed to shrink around him. He didn't walk, he prowled. Each step measured, controlled, inevitable. "No." She held up one trembling hand. "I don't need anything from you. I don't want anything from you." He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that triggered 1,000 memories she'd been trying to bury. His gaze dropped to her belly again, and when it rose to her face, there was steel in those blue eyes. "How far along?" "None of your business." "How far along?" The command in his voice made her spine stiffen. She'd forgotten this. how he could make the air itself obey him, how his will could become gravity, pulling everything into his orbit. 7 months. She watched him do the math, watched understanding settle over his features like frost. You ran when you found out. It wasn't a question. Elena wrapped one arm around her middle protectively. I left because I had to. You left because you were afraid. He took another step closer. Of me. Of what you are, she corrected, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt louder than shouting. Of what you do. Of the world you live in, the one where people disappear and nobody asks questions, where money and power solve every problem except the ones they create. I couldn't raise a child in that darkness, Victor. I wouldn't. Something dangerous flashed across his face. So you chose this instead? He gestured at the diner, at her stained uniform, at the fluorescent lighting that turned everything the color of old bones. You chose poverty and grease stains and standing on your feet for minimum wage while carrying my child? I chose safety, she shot back. I chose a life where I don't wake up wondering if the man I love will come home or end up in a morgue. I chose normal. There is nothing normal about you being here. His voice had gone quiet, which was worse than the command. The quiet was when Victor was most dangerous. There is nothing normal about you hiding from me, depriving me of... He cut himself off, jaw working. Of what? Elena challenged. Of your heir, your property? Is that what this baby is to you? His eyes blazed. That baby is mine. This baby is mine, she corrected, her hand moving protectively to her belly. I'm the one who's been throwing up every morning. I'm the one whose feet don't fit in shoes anymore. I'm the one who'll be there every single day, Victor, not flying to God knows where for God knows what, not disappearing for weeks at a time while I wait and wonder and pretend not to see the blood on your cuffs when you finally come home. Elena said, no. She shook her head, feeling tears burn behind her eyes, but refusing to let them fall. You don't get to do this. You don't get to walk back into my life and... Our life, he interrupted. You're carrying my child. That makes it our life, whether you accept it or not. Miss Carter? Rosie had emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She was a tough woman in her 60s, with iron gray hair and eyes that had seen too much to be easily fooled. Everything okay out here? Elena opened her mouth, but Victor spoke first. We're just having a conversation. Looks like more than a conversation to me. Rosie planted herself beside Elena, a protective gesture that would have been touching if it wasn't so futile. If the lady wants you to leave, mister, you leave. I don't care how expensive that suit is. Victor's gaze shifted to Rosie, and Elena saw something she'd seen before. The moment when he assessed whether someone was a threat or an obstacle. The calculation that happened behind those ice-blue eyes, cold and fast and merciless. But then something unexpected happened. He inclined his head slightly. Not quite a bow, but an acknowledgement. I apologize for disturbing your establishment, but I'm not leaving without Elena. Like hell you're not. It's okay, Rosie. Elena touched the older woman's arm, even though her own hand was shaking. I'll talk to him. Just give us a minute. Rosie looked skeptical, but after a long moment, she nodded. I'll be right over there. You holler if you need me. She shot Victor a warning look that would have been intimidating if he wasn't the most dangerous person in the room by several orders of magnitude. When they were relatively alone again, Elena took a breath. You can't just show up here and I can and I have. Victor's voice was quiet but absolute. Do you have any idea what the last 7 months have been like? Knowing you were gone, not knowing where you were, if you were safe, if you were alive? You could have found me anytime you wanted, Elena said. Don't pretend you couldn't. I gave you space, he replied, and there was something raw in his voice now. I thought you needed time. I thought you'd come back when you were ready. But you weren't coming back, were you? You were going to let me believe you were just gone. Guilt twisted in Elena's chest. I left you a note. I can't do this anymore, Victor quoted from memory, his voice hard. 4 words. After 2 years together, you gave me 4 words and disappeared. What did you want me to say? Elena's voice cracked. That I loved you too much to watch you destroy yourself? That every time you walked out the door, I held my breath until you came home? That I couldn't sleep because I was too busy imagining all the ways you might die? I wanted you to trust me, he said quietly. I wanted you to believe that I would protect you, that I would always protect you. You can't protect me from what you are, Victor. Elena's hand moved to her belly again, an unconscious gesture. And I won't let you pull our child into that world. Our child. He seized on the words. Say it again. She closed her eyes. Don't do this. Say it, Elena. Admit that this baby, this life you're carrying, is mine as much as yours. Biologically, yes, she whispered, but biology doesn't make you a father. Being there does. Showing up does. And you can't show up, Victor, because showing up means leaving behind everything you are. Your business, your empire. You're done. Her eyes snapped open. What? Done, he repeated, his gaze burning into hers. If that's what it takes, I'll walk away from all of it. Today. Right now. Every deal, every territory, every alliance. I don't care. Just come home with me. Let me take care of you. Let me be there when our child is born. Elena stared at him, searching for the lie. She'd seen Victor negotiate before, seen him say whatever necessary to get what he wanted, to close the deal, to win. But this wasn't his negotiation face. This was something else entirely. This was desperation. You don't mean that, she said finally. Try me. He reached for her hand, and she was too shocked to pull away. His fingers closed around hers, warm, solid, real. I've spent 7 months in hell, Elena. 7 months not knowing where you were, if you were safe, if someone had... His jaw clenched. Every day I woke up and made a choice not to burn the world down looking for you. Do you know how hard that was? Then why didn't you, she challenged. Why give me space if you were so desperate to find me? His thumb traced over her knuckles, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. Because I was trying to be what you needed instead of what I am. But I'm done trying, Elena. I'm done pretending I can just let you go. You're mine. That baby is mine, and I'm taking you both home where you belong. You can't just watch me. The certainty in his voice should have terrified her, should have sent her running, but instead, exhaustion crashed over Elena like a wave. She was so tired, tired of being scared, of being alone, of pretending she could do this by herself, tired of lying awake at night wondering if she'd made the right choice, if her pride was worth the price her child might pay. I can't go back to how things were, she whispered. Then we'll make something new. Victor's other hand came up to cup her face, and she hated how good it felt, how right. Whatever you need, Elena, however you need it. Just don't ask me to walk away from you again. Don't ask me to abandon my child. Victor! The bell over the door chimed again. Elena's gaze flickered past Victor's shoulder, and her blood turned to ice. 3 men had entered the diner. They weren't customers. That much was immediately clear. They moved with the same predatory grace as Victor, the same coiled readiness, and they were looking directly at him. Victor went rigid. Stay behind me. What's happening? Elena tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. Marcus, Victor said, his voice carrying across the diner. I'm a little busy here. The lead man, Marcus, apparently, was tall and broad-shouldered, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He stopped about 10 feet away, his hands visible but positioned close to his jacket. We have a situation. It can wait. No, boss. Marcus's gaze flicked to Elena, then back to Victor. It really can't. Elena saw something pass between them, some wordless communication that made Victor's jaw tighten and his eyes go cold. This was the Victor she'd run from, the one who could shut down every human emotion and become something else entirely. Elena, go to the back. Victor's voice was calm, controlled, absolutely terrifying in its steadiness. What? No, I'm not. Please. He looked at her, and for just a second, she saw the man beneath the ice. Please, just trust me. Go to the back with Rosie and stay there until I come get you. Victor, what's going on? Business, he said flatly. The kind you left me to avoid. Now go. Pride made her want to argue, but the baby, their baby, kicked hard against her ribs, a reminder of what was at stake. Elena backed toward the kitchen, her eyes never leaving Victor's face. She saw the moment he shifted completely, saw the walls slam down, the shutters close. When he turned back to Marcus, he wasn't the man who'd held her hand and begged her to come home. He was something else. He was Victor Moreau, and he was dangerous. Talk, he ordered Marcus. Constantine made his move, Marcus said grimly. Took out 3 of our warehouses in the last hour, burned them to the ground, and he left a message. Victor's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. What message? He knows about her. Marcus's gaze cut to Elena again. About the baby. Says if you don't negotiate, he'll handle it himself. The world tilted. Elena's hand shot out to steady herself against the wall, but her knees had turned to water. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of, exactly why she'd run. The moment she became a weapon someone could use against Victor, she became a target. Their child became a target. Get her out of here, Victor said, his voice like stone. Now, full detail. Take her to the safe house on... I'm not going anywhere with your men, Elena cut in, finding her voice despite the fear clawing up her throat. I'm not getting dragged into your war, Victor. He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. You were always in my war, Elena. The moment I fell in love with you, you became the thing I'd burn the world to protect. And the moment you got pregnant with my child, you became the thing every enemy would use to destroy me. Then let me go, she pleaded. Let me disappear again. I'm good at it. I can... No. The word was final, absolute. Constantine already knows about you, which means running won't save you anymore. The only thing that will save you is me. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Boss, we need to move. Now. Elena saw the decision crystallize behind Victor's eyes, saw him weigh every option, calculate every risk, and come to the only conclusion that mattered to him. He was taking her, whether she wanted to go or not. I'm sorry, he said quietly, and he actually sounded like he meant it. Then he turned to Marcus. Bring the car around. Full security detail. I want eyes on every approach. Victor, please. You can hate me later, he said, already moving toward her. Right now, you're getting somewhere safe if I have to carry you there myself. You can't just kidnap me. Watch me. He was beside her in 3 strides, his hand closing around her elbow with firm but careful pressure. Elena tried to pull away, but pregnancy had stolen her balance along with her energy. She stumbled, and Victor caught her against his chest. For a moment they stood frozen, his arms around her, her hands pressed against his shirt, their baby between them, kicking as if in protest. I won't let anything happen to you, Victor said against her hair. I swear it on my life, Elena. Nothing will touch you or our child, even if it means starting a war to keep you safe. That's exactly what I'm afraid of, she whispered. Then be afraid, he said simply. But be afraid somewhere secure. Be afraid where I can protect you. Rosie had emerged from the kitchen, her eyes wide. Elena, you want me to call the cops? Elena almost laughed. The cops couldn't stop Victor Moreau any more than they could stop a hurricane. No, it's okay, Rosie. The hell it is. I'll be fine. Elena met the older woman's eyes, trying to communicate something. Gratitude, maybe, or goodbye. Thank you for everything. Then Victor was guiding her toward the door, his body angled to keep himself between her and any potential threat. Marcus and his men had already secured the parking lot, forming a protective perimeter around a black SUV that looked armored enough to survive a missile strike. The night air hit Elena's face, cool and sharp, after the greasy warmth of the diner. She'd walked into Rosie's 7 hours ago as one person, anonymous, invisible, safe in her obscurity. She was leaving as someone else entirely. She was leaving as Victor Moreau's woman, as the mother of his child, as the target every enemy would come for to bring him to his knees, as the one thing in the world he couldn't afford to lose. Victor handed her into the SUV with surprising gentleness, his hand supporting her lower back as she maneuvered her pregnant bulk into the seat. The interior smelled like leather and gun oil, familiar scents that triggered muscle memory she'd tried to forget. He slid in beside her, immediately fastening her seatbelt with the kind of care that made her throat tight. Marcus took the front passenger seat while another man she didn't recognize climbed behind the wheel. Where are we going? Elena asked as the vehicle pulled smoothly into traffic. Somewhere secure. Victor's hand found hers in the darkness, his thumb tracing circles over her palm. Somewhere Constantine and his people will never find you. Your penthouse. It wasn't a question. Eventually. His jaw tightened. First, we're making sure you haven't been followed. making sure there are no trackers, no surveillance, no loose ends. Then we're getting you checked out by a doctor. I have a doctor. You have a free clinic that sees you once a month and doesn't have security clearance, he corrected. You need an OB who understands discretion and has experience with high-risk situations. This pregnancy isn't high risk. It is now, he said flatly. The moment Konstantin learned about you, everything became high risk. Elena stared out the window, watching the familiar streets blur past. Somewhere behind them was her apartment, barely more than a room really, with peeling wallpaper and water stains on the ceiling, but it was hers, her safe space, her escape. Now she was escaping her escape, running from the place she'd run to. I had a life, she said quietly. It wasn't much, but it was mine. You had survival, Victor corrected. That's not the same as living. At least I was free. His hand tightened on hers. You were alone, struggling, working yourself to exhaustion while carrying my child. That's not freedom, Elena. That's punishment. For what? For loving me, he said simply, and the raw honesty in his voice made her eyes burn. For choosing me despite knowing what I am. You punished yourself by leaving because you thought it was the right thing to do. But all you did was make us both suffer. And what happens now? Elena turned to face him, searching his eyes in the dim light filtering through tinted windows. You put me in a gilded cage, surround me with guards and tell me it's for my protection? I've seen how this story ends, Victor. I won't be your prisoner. You'll be my partner, he said, my equal, the mother of my child and the woman I... He cut himself off, jaw working. Say it, she challenged. If you're going to upend my entire life, at least have the courage to say it. I love you. The words came out rough, like they'd been scraped over broken glass. I've loved you since the moment you looked at me like I was just a man instead of a monster. I loved you when you left, even though it destroyed me. And I love you now, even though you're looking at me like I'm your enemy instead of the only person in the world who would die to keep you safe. Lena felt tears spill over, hot and fast. Love isn't supposed to feel like this. Maybe not, Victor agreed, but it's all I know how to give you. The SUV turned onto a private road, heading toward the glittering skyline of the city's financial district, toward wealth and power and all the trappings of Victor's world, toward everything Elena had run from. But as the baby kicked again, strong, insistent, real, she realized something she'd been avoiding for 7 months. She couldn't run anymore. Not from Victor, not from his world, not from the truth that their child deserved more than her fear and his absence. Their baby deserved both of them. Together. Even if together meant danger. Even if together meant stepping back into the darkness she'd been trying to escape. I need rules, Elena said finally. If I'm doing this, if I'm letting you back in, there have to be rules. Victor's expression didn't change, but she felt the shift in him. The hope, carefully contained. Name them. No lies, she said, about anything. I don't care how ugly the truth is. I need to know what's happening. Agreed. The baby comes first, always. Every decision, every risk, our child's safety is the priority. Absolutely. And I get a say. She held his gaze. In everything. Security measures, doctors, where we live, how we raise our child. I'm not a bystander in my own life, Victor. I won't be managed. You never were, he said quietly. That's why I fell in love with you. The SUV pulled into an underground parking garage, descending several levels into what looked like a private bunker. Elena counted security cameras, armed guards, reinforced blast doors. This wasn't just protection. This was a fortress. Welcome home, Victor said as the vehicle stopped. For tonight, anyway. Home. The word felt foreign and familiar all at once, like coming back to a place she'd left so long ago she'd forgotten what it felt like to belong. But as Victor helped her out of the SUV, his hand steady on her lower back, his eyes scanning for threats with automatic precision, Elena felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in 7 months. She felt safe. Not because the world was any less dangerous, not because Konstantin had suddenly stopped being a threat, but because Victor Moreau, the most dangerous man she'd ever known, had made her safety his singular purpose. And she believed him. God help her, she believed him. The elevator ride up to the penthouse was silent, except for the quiet hum of machinery and Elena's labored breathing. Pregnancy had turned simple tasks like standing into endurance tests. Victor noticed, of course. He noticed everything, and positioned himself so she could lean against him without making it obvious she needed the support. The doors opened onto a space Elena remembered in painful detail. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than most people's cars, art on the walls that was definitely original and definitely priceless. But something was different. The coldness was gone. The sterile perfection that had always made her feel like a visitor in a museum had been replaced by something warmer, more lived in. There were books on the coffee table, actual books, not decorator pieces. A blanket thrown over the back of the couch, small signs that someone had been living here instead of just existing. "I changed things," Victor said, watching her take in the space. "After you left. Couldn't stand how empty it felt." Elena ran her hand along the back of the couch, feeling the soft fabric. "It's nicer." "It's still not a home," he admitted. "Not without you." Before she could respond, a door opened and a woman emerged, petite, professional, carrying a medical bag. "Mr. Moreau, this is the patient?" "Dr. Sarah Chen, this is Elena Carter." Victor made the introduction smoothly. Dr. Chen is one of the best OBGYNs in the city, and she's been fully briefed on the security situation. Elena stiffened. "You called a doctor before I even agreed to come here?" "I called a doctor the moment I found you," Victor said unapologetically. 7 months pregnant, and I don't know anything about your health, the baby's development, whether there have been complications. Yes, Elena, I called a doctor." Dr. Chen stepped forward with a warm smile. "Why don't we start with a basic exam, just to establish a baseline and make sure both you and the baby are doing well?" "I had a checkup 2 weeks ago," Elena protested, even as exhaustion made her sway slightly. "Everything was fine." "Then this will be quick," Dr. Chen said smoothly. "Mr. Moreau has set up a comfortable room for the examination. If you'll follow me." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to assert some kind of control over a situation that was spiraling further from her grasp by the second. But her feet hurt, her back ached, and the baby was doing gymnastics against her ribs. "Fine," she said. "But Victor doesn't come in." He looked like he wanted to argue, but Dr. Chen touched his arm. "Why don't you give us 30 minutes? I'll come find you after the exam." Victor's jaw tightened, but he nodded. His eyes met Elena's. "I'll be right outside if you need me." "I won't," she said, hating how the words felt like a lie. The examination room was actually a converted bedroom, beautifully appointed, with medical equipment that looked state-of-the-art positioned discreetly around a comfortable exam table. Dr. Chen worked with efficient professionalism, checking Elena's vital signs, measuring her belly, listening to the baby's heartbeat with a Doppler that filled the room with the rapid flutter of new life. "Everything looks good," Dr. Chen said finally, making notes on a tablet. "The baby's heartbeat is strong, your blood pressure is slightly elevated, but nothing concerning, and based on measurements, I'd estimate you're about 30 weeks along. Does that match your calculations?" 30 weeks and 3 days, Elena confirmed. "And the father?" Dr. Chen asked carefully. "I understand this is a complicated situation, but is he planning to be involved in the pregnancy moving forward?" Elena laughed, the sound sharp and humorless. "Seems like he doesn't plan to give me much choice." Dr. Chen set down her tablet. "Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you feel safe here?" The question hung in the air between them. Elena opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. Did she feel safe? With armed guards in the lobby and security cameras in every hallway and a man who could probably start a war with a phone call standing just outside the door? "I don't know," she admitted finally. "I feel protected, but I don't know if that's the same thing as safe." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "The reason I ask is because I need to know if you're here of your own free will. If you need help, if you need resources to leave, I can provide those, confidentially." "He's not abusive," Elena said quickly. "Victor would never, he's not like that." "Abuse takes many forms," Dr. Chen said gently. "Control, isolation, using fear or resources as weapons." "I know what abuse looks like," Elena interrupted. "And this isn't it. Victor is complicated, dangerous, yes, controlling, absolutely. But He's not trying to hurt me. He's trying to protect me. There's a difference. Is there? Dr. Chen challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like he found you working at a diner, decided you were coming home with him, and brought you here whether you wanted to come or not. Elena's hands moved to her belly protectively. There are people who want to hurt me because of who he is. That part is true. And I don't think I can protect myself and this baby alone anymore. So yes, I came here. Maybe not entirely willingly, but not entirely unwillingly either. It's complicated. Dr. Chen studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but I'm giving you my personal number. If you ever need anything, medical care, someone to talk to, resources, you call me. Day or night. Understood? Understood, Elena whispered. Good. Dr. Chen's professional smile returned. Now, let's talk about the rest of your pregnancy. You're in your third trimester, which means we'll want to see you weekly from here on out. I'll coordinate with Mr. Moreau's security team to make sure visits are safe and discreet. Weekly seems excessive. Weekly is standard for high-risk pregnancies, Dr. Chen corrected. And whether you like it or not, your pregnancy just became high risk the moment you entered Mr. Moreau's world. The stress alone is a factor we'll need to monitor carefully. They spent another 15 minutes discussing nutrition, exercise, warning signs to watch for. Dr. Chen was thorough and kind, never once making Elena feel judged for her choices or her situation. By the time she was cleared to leave, Elena felt wrung out and exhausted. Victor was waiting in the living room, standing by the windows with the phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking in rapid-fire Russian, a language Elena had heard before during late-night calls that always preceded him leaving for days at a time. When he saw her, he ended the call immediately. Well? The single word carried the weight of 1,000 questions. Both healthy, Dr. Chen reported. I've given Elena my recommendations for the remainder of her pregnancy. She'll need weekly checkups, proper nutrition, and most importantly, reduce stress. Victor's laugh was bitter. Reduce stress, of course. I'm serious, Mr. Moreau. Dr. Chen's voice went sharp. Stress can trigger preterm labor, preeclampsia, and a host of other complications. Whatever is happening in your world right now, Elena needs to be insulated from it, as much as possible. I'm working on it, Victor said grimly. After Dr. Chen left, Elena and Victor stood in awkward silence. The city glittered below them, oblivious to the drama playing out in the penthouse. Somewhere out there, Constantine was making his moves, positioning his pieces, preparing for whatever came next. And here, Elena was standing in the eye of a hurricane she'd tried so hard to escape. You should eat something, Victor said finally. When's the last time you had a real meal? I ate at the diner. Diner food doesn't count, he interrupted. I'm talking about actual nutrition, vegetables, protein. Things that are good for you and the baby. Despite everything, Elena felt a smile tug at her lips. You sound like Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen is right. He moved toward the kitchen, a gleaming space full of high-end appliances that Elena had never seen him use. I had my chef stock the refrigerator. What sounds good? Victor, you don't have to... I'm taking care of you, he said simply. That includes feeding you. So what sounds good? And don't say nothing, because I know pregnant women are supposed to eat every few hours. Elena sank onto one of the bar stools, her feet screaming with relief. Something simple. I can't handle anything too rich right now. 20 minutes later, she was eating grilled chicken with roasted vegetables, while Victor watched her like she might disappear if he looked away. It should have been uncomfortable, his intensity, his focus, the way he tracked every bite she took. But instead, it felt almost normal. This is good, she admitted. The chef will be pleased. Victor hadn't touched his own plate, too busy watching her eat. Elena, we need to talk about Constantine. Her appetite vanished. I don't want to know. You need to know, he corrected. You said no lies, remember? That includes the dangerous truths. Elena set down her fork. Fine, tell me. Konstantin Volkov runs the Russian syndicate on the East Coast, Victor began, his voice taking on a lecturing quality, like he was briefing her on a business competitor instead of a man who wanted them dead. We've been at war for territory for the last 3 years. Small skirmishes, mostly. Calculated moves. But 6 months ago, he lost his son in a deal that went bad. Your deal, Elena guessed. My deal, Victor confirmed. His son was reckless, stupid, tried to double-cross me. I didn't kill him, he got himself killed. But Konstantin doesn't see it that way. So he wants revenge. He wants to destroy me, Victor said flatly. He wants to take everything I've built and burn it to the ground. And now that he knows about you, about the baby, his jaw tightened. Your leverage. The one thing that could bring me to my knees. Elena's hand moved to her belly. So what do? We stay here where it's secure. We let my people handle Konstantin. And we wait for him to make a mistake. That could take months, Elena protested. I can't just hide in your penthouse until the baby comes. I have a life, Victor. A job. Friends. You have me, he interrupted. And our baby. Everything else is negotiable. That's not fair. Fair? He laughed, the sound harsh. Nothing about this is fair, Elena. It's not fair that loving me put you in danger. It's not fair that our child will grow up with armed guards and security protocols. It's not fair that I can't give you the normal life you want. But this is the reality, and we have to deal with it. Elena felt tears prick her eyes again. Hormones and exhaustion and fear all tangling together. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I, Victor admitted. He moved around the counter, kneeling beside her stool so they were eye level. I've never been a father before. Never had to protect someone this completely. But I'm going to figure it out, Elena. For you. For our baby. I swear it. His hands covered hers on her belly, and she felt the baby kick against their joined palms. Victor's eyes widened, wonder replacing the cold calculation for just a moment. Does it hurt? He asked quietly. No. Elena guided his hand to where the movement was strongest. Feels strange, but not painful, like butterflies, but bigger. He's strong. Victor's voice had gone soft with awe. Or she, Elena corrected. Or she, he agreed. You don't know? I didn't want to find out alone. The admission slipped out before she could stop it. Didn't want to have that moment without... She cut herself off, but Victor understood. His hand tightened over hers. We'll find out together, whatever you want. What I want, Elena said slowly, is for this to be real. Not just protective instinct or obligation. I need to know that you're here because you choose to be, not because some psychopath forced your hand. Victor rose, pulling her up with him. His hands framed her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about what those hands could do. I choose you. I've chosen you every day for the last 7 months, even when I couldn't find you, even when I thought I'd lost you forever. This isn't obligation, Elena. This is the only choice I can make and still be able to live with myself. Then he kissed her, soft and careful, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. And Elena, despite every rational thought screaming that this was a mistake, kissed him back. Because maybe Dr. Chen was right. Maybe this was complicated. Maybe there were elements of control and protection and fear all tangled up in whatever this was between them. But it was also love. Messy, impossible, dangerous love. And their baby, kicking between them, growing stronger every day, deserved parents who loved each other, even if that love came wrapped in darkness. When they finally pulled apart, Victor rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered. Please, just stay. And Elena, feeling the baby move and the exhaustion drag at her bones, and the weight of 7 months of loneliness crash over her all at once, did the only thing she could. She stayed. Elena woke to unfamiliar silence. Not the rattling pipes and distant traffic of her studio apartment, not the pre-dawn sounds of neighbors leaving for early shifts. This silence was thick, insulated, the kind that came from triple-paned windows and walls designed to keep the world out. She opened her eyes to soft gray light filtering through sheer curtains. The bed beneath her was impossibly comfortable, the sheets Egyptian cotton with a thread count she didn't want to think about. For a moment, disoriented and half asleep, she wondered if the last 12 hours had been a fever dream. Then the baby kicked, and reality came flooding back. She was in Victor's penthouse, in his bed, though he'd slept on the couch, giving her space even as every instinct probably screamed at him to stay close. She'd agreed to stay, agreed to let him back into her life, into their child's life, agreed to step back into the darkness she'd spent 7 months escaping. Elena sat up carefully, her body protesting the movement. Pregnancy had turned her into someone who moved like she was underwater, slow, deliberate, aware of the weight she carried. She found a robe laid out at the foot of the bed, soft cashmere that probably cost more than a month's rent at her old place. The penthouse was quiet as she made her way to the living room. Morning sun painted the city in golden shadow, the skyline sharp and clean against a cloudless sky. It was beautiful in a way that felt almost aggressive. All that wealth and power on display, impossible to ignore. Victor stood by the windows, already dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking in that same clipped Russian from last night, his free hand gesturing sharply as he made some point. When he heard her footsteps, he turned, and the transformation was immediate. The hard edges softened. The cold calculation in his eyes warmed to something almost tender. He ended the call without preamble. "You're awake. How do you feel?" "Like I slept on a cloud," Elena admitted, moving to the kitchen, which is either very good or slightly alarming given the circumstances. "It's good," Victor said firmly, following her. "You needed rest. Real rest. Not whatever you were getting in that," he caught himself, "in your apartment." Elena filled a glass with water from the refrigerator, buying time to organize her thoughts. "We need to talk about what happens next." "Agreed." Victor leaned against the counter, giving her space but watching her carefully. "But first, breakfast." Dr. Chen was very specific about regular meals. "Victor, humor me." He was already pulling ingredients from the refrigerator with surprising competence. "Scrambled eggs, whole wheat toast, fresh fruit. You eat, then we talk about whatever you want." There was something almost domestic about watching Victor Moreau crack eggs into a bowl, whisk them with practiced efficiency, heat a pan with just the right amount of butter. Elena had never seen this side of him, had never imagined it existed. In their previous life together, meals had been catered affairs or restaurant reservations, never this quiet ritual of preparation. "You cook," she observed, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. "I survive," he corrected, plating perfectly fluffy eggs beside toast and a small bowl of berries. "There's a difference. But I learned the basics a long time ago. Useful skill when you can't always trust who's preparing your food." The reminder of his world, of the paranoia and danger that colored every aspect of his life, sent a chill through her. "Is that really necessary? Worrying about poison?" Victor set the plate in front of her, his expression unreadable. "In my position? Always. Though less so now. I have people who handle that kind of security." "People who taste your food before you eat it?" Elena asked, picking up her fork even as her appetite wavered. "People who ensure the entire supply chain is secure," he clarified. "From farm to table, everything is vetted. Paranoid maybe, but effective." Elena took a bite of eggs, letting the revelation settle. This was the reality she'd agreed to step back into. A world where something as simple as breakfast required military-grade security protocols. "And now I'm part of that, the baby and I." "Yes." No hesitation, no apology. "From this moment forward, everything you eat, everywhere you go, everyone you interact with, it all goes through security screening." "That's insane. That's survival," Victor countered. "Constantine isn't the only threat, Elena. He's just the most immediate. There are always people looking for leverage, for weaknesses to exploit. You and our child, you're the ultimate leverage." Elena set down her fork, her appetite gone. "So what do you want me to do? Stay locked in this penthouse for the next 2 months until the baby comes? Hide from the world?" "I want you safe," Victor said quietly. "Beyond that, we figure it out together. You wanted a say in decisions, you have it. Tell me what you need." What did she need? Elena had spent so long focused on basic survival, making rent, buying groceries, getting through each shift, that the question felt almost foreign. But sitting here in Victor's kitchen, eating food he'd made with his own hands, she realized she'd been surviving for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to actually live. "I need purpose," she said finally. "I need to do something other than sit around waiting to give birth. I need to feel useful." Victor considered this, his expression thoughtful. "What did you do before? Before the diner?" "I was studying," Elena admitted. "Art history. I was 3 semesters away from my degree when I met you." Something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe, or guilt. You never told me you'd stopped. You never asked. The words came out sharper than she intended, but they were true. Their relationship had been so consuming, so intense, that everything else had fallen away, including her education, her plans, her future. I couldn't afford tuition, and living with you felt like, I don't know, like I was being kept. I didn't want to ask you for money. Pride, Victor said softly. That damned pride of yours. It's all I had, Elena shot back. When everything else about our relationship was unequal, your money, your power, your control over every situation, pride was the only thing that was mine. Victor's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then set it aside. What would you need to finish your degree? Elena blinked. What? Your degree. Art history. What would you need to complete it? I don't know. Access to my transcripts, enrollment at a university, tuition money? She shook her head. Victor, I'm 7 months pregnant. This isn't the time to go back to school. Why not? He leaned forward, his intensity focused on her like a laser. Online courses exist, private tutors, libraries full of research materials. You said you needed purpose. Let me give you this. You can't just throw money at everything and make it work, Elena protested, even as hope flickered in her chest. There are deadlines, requirements, applications. Which I can handle, Victor interrupted, or rather, which people I employ can handle. Elena, if this is what you want, if this is what will make you feel like yourself again, then it's done. Consider it done. She stared at him, searching for the catch. With Victor, there was always a catch, always an angle, a calculation, a way his generosity served his own purposes. Why? Because you're brilliant, he said simply. Because I watched you light up talking about Renaissance paintings and Baroque sculpture. Because in 2 years together, I never once heard you talk about your dreams for the future, and that was my fault. I was so focused on keeping you that I never asked what you wanted to become. Tears pricked Elena's eyes. Damn hormones. You can't just fix 7 months of separation with grand gestures, Victor. I'm not trying to fix anything, he said. I'm trying to give you what you should have had all along. Choice, agency, the ability to build the life you want instead of just surviving the one you're stuck with. Elena picked up her fork again, needing something to do with her hands. The eggs had gone cold, but she ate them anyway, chewing mechanically while her mind raced. Could she really do this? Go back to school while 7 months pregnant? Finish her degree while preparing to become a mother? With Victor's resources, maybe? With unlimited access to tutors and materials, and time that wasn't consumed by working double shifts just to make rent? Maybe it was possible. I'd need to see the course requirements, she said carefully. Talk to an academic advisor. Figure out if it's even feasible given the timeline. Victor's smile was small but genuine. I'll have someone contact your previous university today. We'll get everything sorted out. And when the baby comes? Elena pressed. What then? Do I put everything on hold again? Then we figure out childcare, Victor said simply. Nannies, if you want them. Or I restructure my schedule to be home more. Or we do some combination that works for both of us. The point is, Elena, your dreams don't end because you're becoming a mother. They just evolve. It was the right thing to say. Almost too right, like he'd rehearsed it or had someone coach him on what a modern, supportive partner should sound like. But there was something in his eyes, a vulnerability she rarely saw, that made her believe he meant it. Okay, she said softly. Okay, we can try. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and Elena saw his expression shift, the warmth draining away, replaced by cold focus. I need to take this. Stay inside. Don't answer the door for anyone except me or Marcus. What's happening? Business, he said, already moving toward his office. Nothing for you to worry about. But Elena was already worrying, because business in Victor's world meant violence and strategy and all the things she'd been trying to protect their child from. She cleaned up breakfast in silence, listening to the muffled sound of his voice through the office door. His tone was sharp, commanding, the voice he used when giving orders that couldn't be questioned. She was drying the last plate when Marcus arrived, announced by the elevator chime. He looked like he hadn't slept, his suit rumpled and his expression grim. Where is he? Marcus asked without preamble. Office? Elena said, setting down the dish towel. What's wrong? Marcus hesitated, clearly weighing how much to tell her. Nothing you need to— Don't, Elena interrupted. Don't patronize me. If something's happening, I have a right to know. Marcus studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Constantine hit one of our shipments last night, took out 3 men, left a message carved into— He stopped himself. Left a message. For Victor. Elena's hand moved to her belly protectively. What kind of message? The kind that makes it clear he knows about you, Marcus said bluntly. About the baby. About everything. The office door opened and Victor emerged, his phone still in his hand. He took one look at Marcus and Elena standing together, and his expression darkened. What did you tell her? What she had a right to know, Marcus said evenly. Sir, we need to move on this. Now. Every hour we wait. I'm aware of the timeline, Victor cut in. Elena, go back to the bedroom, please. No. She crossed her arms, even though the gesture felt ridiculous given her pregnant belly. You promised no lies. That includes hiding things from me when they involve my safety. Victor's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. Instead, he gestured to the living room. Fine, sit down, both of you. Elena settled onto the couch while Marcus remained standing, his posture military straight. Victor paced in front of the windows, his movements restless and controlled at the same time. Constantine is escalating, Victor said finally. Last night's hit wasn't about territory or money. It was about sending a message. He wants a meeting. A trap, Marcus said immediately. Obviously, Victor agreed, but also an opportunity. To do what? Elena asked. Get yourself killed? Victor turned to face her, and the cold calculation in his eyes made her shiver. To end this. Permanently. No. Elena stood up, moving closer despite every instinct that said to keep distance between herself and the darkness in his expression. You are not walking into some kind of ambush. Our baby needs a father, Victor. A living father. Which is exactly why I need to handle Constantine, he said. As long as he's a threat, you and our child will never be safe. Every moment, every day, you'll be looking over your shoulder, wondering when he'll make his move. So let someone else handle it, Elena pleaded. You have people, resources. This is personal now, Victor interrupted. The moment he threatened you, it became personal. And personal threats don't get delegated. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Boss, she has a point. You don't need to be the one who— I do, Victor said flatly. Constantine wants me. If I send someone else, he'll see it as weakness. He'll escalate. He'll go after Elena directly instead of using her as leverage. Elena felt ice slide down her spine. You think he'd come after me? I think he'd do whatever it takes to destroy me, Victor said, his voice gentle despite the brutal honesty. And destroying me means taking away everything I care about. You, our baby, everything. She sank back onto the couch, her mind racing. This was the reality of Victor's world, not just danger as an abstract concept, but actual, immediate threats from people who saw her as nothing more than a tool to hurt the man she loved. What's the plan? She asked quietly. Victor exchanged a glance with Marcus. The meeting is set for tomorrow night. Neutral territory, limited security on both sides. We go in, we negotiate. You don't negotiate with Constantine, Marcus said grimly. You know that. He wants blood. Then we give him blood, Victor said simply. Just not ours. Elena watched the two men communicate in that wordless way people did when they'd worked together long enough to anticipate each other's thoughts. She didn't understand the specifics, but she understood the general shape of what they were planning. Violence. Strategic, calculated violence. I don't want you to become a monster for me, Elena said softly. Victor crossed to her, kneeling in front of the couch so they were eye level. I've always been a monster, Elena. You just saw the parts of me I kept hidden. But this, protecting you, protecting our child, this is the one good thing I can do with what I am. There has to be another way. There isn't. He took her hands in his grip firm but gentle. I've been in this world long enough to know how these things end. Constantine won't stop until one of us is dead. I'd rather it be him. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to find some loophole, some alternative that didn't involve Victor walking into danger. But she'd known when she agreed to stay what she was signing up for, had known that loving Victor Moreau meant accepting all of him, including the parts that solved problems with violence. "Promise me you'll be careful," she whispered. "Always." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Marcus, start preparations. Full security detail. I want every contingency covered." Marcus nodded and headed for the elevator, leaving Elena and Victor alone in the too-quiet penthouse. "What do I do?" Elena asked. "While you're out there risking your life, what am I supposed to do?" "You stay here," Victor said. "You stay safe. You take care of yourself and our baby. That's all I need you to do." It felt inadequate, passive, like she was just a prize to be protected while men fought over her. But what choice did she have? She couldn't fight Constantine, couldn't protect herself against trained killers. She could only trust that Victor knew what he was doing, that he'd come back. The rest of the day passed in strange suspension. Victor spent hours in his office, making calls and reviewing documents Marcus delivered via courier. Elena tried to distract herself with television, with books, with anything that would quiet the anxiety churning in her gut. But everything felt hollow. By evening, she'd given up pretending she was fine. She stood by the windows, watching the city light up as the sun set, and felt the baby move restlessly inside her. "He can feel your stress," Victor said from behind her. She hadn't heard him approach, but she wasn't surprised. He moved like a predator when he wanted to, silent, controlled. "She," Elena corrected automatically. "And yes, probably. Dr. Chen said stress is bad for the baby." "Then we need to reduce your stress." Victor's hand settled on her shoulders, his thumbs working at the knots of tension in her muscles. "Talk to me. What would help?" "You not going to this meeting would help," Elena said. "But since that's not an option, I don't know. Maybe just be here. Now. Instead of planning and strategizing and preparing for tomorrow." Victor was quiet for a moment, then his hands stilled. "Come with me." He led her to the master bedroom, the one she'd slept in last night but hadn't really looked at. Now she noticed details she'd missed. The photographs on the dresser, all of her. Candid shots from their time together, moments she hadn't known he'd captured. Her laughing at some restaurant, reading in his study, asleep in this very bed, morning light painting her face. "You kept these," she whispered. "I kept everything," Victor admitted. "Your coffee mug in the kitchen, your favorite blanket, the books you were reading. I couldn't make myself put them away. It felt too much like admitting you weren't coming back." Elena picked up one of the frames, a photo of them together at some charity gala. She was wearing a dress he'd bought her, emerald green silk that had cost a fortune. She looked happy, young, unaware of how complicated everything would become. "I wasn't that person anymore," she said. "After I found out I was pregnant, I couldn't be her. She was naive. She thought love was enough." "What do you think now?" Victor asked quietly. Elena set down the frame carefully. "I think love is necessary but not sufficient. I think it's the foundation, but you have to build something on top of it. Trust, honesty, partnership, all the things we didn't have before." "And now?" She turned to face him, this man who'd upended her life twice, first by making her love him, then by finding her when she'd thought she was safely hidden away. "Now we try to build something better. If you survive tomorrow night—" "I will," Victor said with absolute certainty. "I have too much to lose not to." He pulled her close, careful of her belly, and Elena let herself lean into him, let herself take comfort in his strength, even knowing that same strength came from a capacity for violence she didn't want to think about. "Tell me about the baby," Victor said against her hair. "What's it like? Carrying our child?" Elena smiled despite everything. "Weird. Beautiful. Terrifying. Sometimes I feel these little flutters, like butterflies. Other times it's full-on kicks that take my breath away. And lately, there's this rolling sensation, like the baby's doing somersaults. Does it hurt?" "Not really. It's uncomfortable sometimes, especially when tiny feet find my ribs. But mostly, it's just surreal. Knowing there's a whole person growing inside me, a person who's half you and half me." Victor's hand moved to her belly, and as if on cue, the baby kicked against his palm. His sharp intake of breath made Elena laugh. Strong, he said with unmistakable pride. Stubborn, Elena corrected. Already takes after both of us. They stood like that for a long time, Victor's hand on her belly, feeling their child move. And for those moments, Elena let herself believe in the possibility of a future. A real future. Not just survival, but actual life. With family dinners and bedtime stories and all the ordinary moments that seemed impossible in Victor's extraordinary world. But when morning came, reality crashed back. Victor was up before dawn, dressing in dark clothes that somehow looked both casual and tactical. Elena watched from the bed as he strapped a shoulder holster over his shirt, checked the weapon with practiced efficiency, then covered it with a jacket. You don't have to watch this, he said quietly. Yes, I do. Elena sat up, pulling the sheets around herself. I need to see all of you, Victor, not just the parts you think I can handle. He crossed to the bed, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her with an intensity that felt like goodbye. When he pulled back, his eyes were fierce. I'm coming back, he said. I swear it. I'm coming back to you and our baby, and when I do, Constantine won't be a threat anymore. What if something goes wrong? Elena's voice cracked. What if you don't come back? Then Marcus has instructions to keep you safe, to make sure you and the baby have everything you need. Financially, you'll be... I don't care about money, Elena interrupted. I care about you. I care about our child having a father. Which is why I'm doing this, Victor said firmly. I will not let Constantine take that future from us. I won't let him win. Elena wanted to argue more, wanted to beg him to stay, to find another way. But she could see in his eyes that the decision was made. Victor Moreau had chosen his course, and nothing would divert him from it. Come back to me, she whispered. Always, he promised. Then he was gone, the elevator doors closing behind him with a soft chime that sounded too much like a death knell. Elena spent the day in agony. Marcus had stationed guards throughout the building and called in regular updates. Victor was in transit. Victor had arrived at the meeting location. Victor was inside. But there were no details, no reassurances, just terse confirmations that he was still alive. By evening, Elena was pacing the penthouse like a caged animal. The baby was restless too, kicking and rolling in a way that made her wonder if somehow their child could sense the danger their father was walking into. She was standing by the windows, watching the sun paint the sky in violent shades of orange and red, when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Elena almost didn't answer, but something, instinct maybe or desperation, made her swipe to accept the call. Hello? Elena Carter. The voice was unfamiliar, male, with a faint Russian accent. I've been looking forward to speaking with you. Ice flooded her veins. Who is this? I think you know, the voice said smoothly. Victor is with me now. We're having such an interesting conversation about you. About your baby. Constantine. Elena's hand moved protectively to her belly. If you hurt him, you'll what? Constantine laughed, the sound cold and amused. You're 7 months pregnant and hiding in a tower. You have no power here, Elena, no leverage. You're just a woman who made the mistake of loving a very dangerous man. What do you want? Elena forced herself to keep her voice steady, even as panic clawed at her throat. I want Victor Moreau to suffer, Constantine said simply. I want him to know what it feels like to lose everything. And you, my dear, you're how I make that happen. The line went dead. Elena stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear, her mind racing. Constantine had Victor, which meant the meeting had been a trap after all, and Victor had walked right into it. She called Marcus immediately. Constantine just called me. He has Victor. There was a pause, then Marcus's voice came through, tight with controlled fury. That's not possible. I have eyes on the meeting location. Victor's inside, but He cut off. Hold on. Elena waited, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The baby kicked frantically, as if sensing her terror. Miss Carter. Marcus's voice was different now, harder. I need you to stay exactly where you are. Don't move, don't answer the door, don't shh. An explosion shattered the night. Even from 40 floors up, Elena heard it. A deep, concussive boom that rattled the windows. She ran to the glass, looking down at the city, and saw smoke rising from somewhere in the financial district. "Marcus," she said into the phone. "Marcus, what was that?" But the line was dead. Elena tried calling back, tried Victor's number, tried everyone she could think of. But all she got was silence or voicemail or nothing at all. And then, as she stood at the window watching smoke billow into the darkening sky, she felt it. A sharp, sudden pain low in her abdomen. Not the baby kicking, something else entirely. Something wrong. Another contraction came harder this time, and Elena gasped. Too early. It was too early. She wasn't due for another 2 months. But her body didn't care about timelines or medical projections. Another contraction hit, and with it came wetness, her water breaking, soaking through her clothes and pooling at her feet. "No," Elena whispered. "No, no, no, not now, not like this." She grabbed her phone with shaking hands, managed to dial 911. The operator's voice was calm, professional, asking questions Elena could barely process through the panic and pain. "I'm in labor," she managed. 7 months pregnant. My water just broke. I need... Another contraction cut off her words. The operator was saying something about staying calm, about help being on the way, but Elena couldn't focus. All she could think about was Victor, somewhere in the city, possibly dead in that explosion, and their baby, trying to be born too soon, too small, into a world of violence and chaos. The elevator chimed. Elena's head snapped up. Marcus burst through the doors, his face streaked with soot and blood, his expression wild. "We need to get you out of here," he said, already moving toward her. "Now. Constantine's people are—" He stopped, taking in her wet clothes, the way she was doubled over. "Elena?" "The baby's coming," she gasped. "Marcus, the baby's coming, and I don't know where Victor is, and he's alive," Marcus said quickly, pulling out his phone. "Injured, but alive. We got him out before the building collapsed. He's being treated now." Relief and terror warred in Elena's chest. "I need to see him." You need a hospital," Marcus interrupted, already calling for backup. "And we need to move fast. Can you walk?" Elena nodded, even though another contraction was building. Marcus supported her weight as they headed for the elevator, his other hand on his weapon, his eyes scanning for threats. The ride down felt endless. Elena counted contractions, trying to remember everything she'd learned in the prenatal classes she'd taken at the free clinic. Breathe through the pain, stay calm. The baby needed her to stay calm. But calm was impossible when the elevator doors opened onto chaos. The lobby was swarming with armed men, Victor's security team, their weapons drawn, their expressions grim. Marcus guided her through them toward an armored SUV idling at the curb, its doors already open. "Hospital," Marcus barked at the driver. "Fastest route, and call ahead. She's in premature labor." Elena was helped into the back seat, Marcus sliding in beside her. As the vehicle pulled away from the building, she caught a glimpse of another SUV pulling up, and Victor being helped out, his shirt bloody, his face pale, but alive. Their eyes met through the window for just a second, and in that second, Elena saw everything: his fear, his determination, his absolute refusal to let anything happen to her or their child. Then they were moving, racing through city streets toward the hospital, and Elena could only hold on as her body tried to bring their baby into the world 2 months too soon. The contractions were coming faster now, each one a wave of pain that stole her breath. Marcus was on the phone, coordinating with the hospital, with Victor's people, his voice steady even as his free hand gripped hers hard enough to hurt. "You're going to be okay," he said, and Elena wanted to believe him. "Both of you. The baby's going to be fine." But as another contraction hit, harder than all the others, Elena felt the truth settle in her bones. Nothing about this was going to be fine. Not yet. The hospital emergency entrance blazed with fluorescent light as the SUV screeched to a stop. Elena barely registered the organized chaos that erupted around her. Medical staff rushing forward with a wheelchair, Marcus barking orders, someone checking her vitals even as they wheeled her through automatic doors that hissed open like mechanical lungs. 30 weeks gestation, she heard Marcus say to a doctor who'd materialized beside them. Water broke approximately 20 minutes ago. Contractions every 3 to 4 minutes. "We need her in labor and delivery immediately," the doctor said, already running alongside the wheelchair. "Has she had any prenatal complications? Previous pregnancies?" First pregnancy, Elena managed between contractions. No complications. Everything was normal until pain cut off the rest of her sentence. The doctor, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and steel in her voice, leaned closer. Elena, I'm Dr. Patricia Morrison. We're going to take excellent care of you and your baby, but I need you to focus on breathing through the contractions. Can you do that for me? Elena nodded, even though panic was clawing at her throat. Too early, the baby was coming too early. 30 weeks meant underdeveloped lungs, potential complications, weeks in the NICU if they were lucky. She'd read all the statistics during sleepless nights at her old apartment, terrified of exactly this scenario. They burst through doors into a delivery suite that looked more like a luxury hotel room than a hospital. Private, spacious, equipped with technology Elena didn't recognize. Victor's influence, clearly. This wasn't where they brought women without insurance or connections. Nurses swarmed around her, helping her change into a hospital gown, attaching monitors that beeped and hummed. One wrapped a blood pressure cuff around her arm, while another positioned monitors on her belly to track the baby's heartbeat. "Where's Victor?" Elena asked Marcus, who'd stationed himself by the door like a guard. "Is he coming?" "He's being treated in another wing," Marcus said carefully. "Shrapnel wounds, some burns, nothing life-threatening, but the doctors want to run tests before they clear him to move." "I need to see him." Another contraction hit, and Elena gritted her teeth through it. "Our baby is coming, and he needs to be here." "I'm working on it," Marcus promised. "But right now, you need to focus on you and the baby." Dr. Morrison had finished her examination, her expression professionally neutral in a way that made Elena's stomach clench. "You're dilated to 5 centimeters. The baby's coming whether we're ready or not. Given the gestational age, we need to discuss options." "What options?" Elena's hands moved protectively to her belly. "The baby's coming. What options are there?" "We can try to slow labor with medication," Dr. Morrison explained. "Buy a few more days or weeks for the baby's lungs to develop. But given that your water has already broken, the risk of infection increases with every hour we delay." "So what do you recommend?" Elena asked, hating how small her voice sounded. "Honestly, I recommend we proceed with delivery. Your baby is showing good vitals, strong heartbeat. 30 weeks isn't ideal, but with proper NICU care, the prognosis is generally positive. We'll have a neonatal team standing by." Elena closed her eyes, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. She was supposed to have 2 more months to prepare, to set up a nursery, to take classes and read books and feel ready. Instead, she was about to give birth in the middle of a war zone, with Victor bleeding somewhere else in the hospital, and Constantine's threat still hanging over them like a blade. "Do it," she whispered, "whatever's safest for the baby." Dr. Morrison squeezed her hand. "You're doing great, Elena. I'm going to step out and coordinate with the neonatal team. Then we'll get you set up for delivery. The nurse will give you something for the pain if you want it." "I want Victor," Elena said. "Please, he needs to be here when our baby is born." "I'll see what I can do," Dr. Morrison promised, though her expression suggested she thought it was unlikely. After the doctor left, Elena was alone with Marcus and the quiet beeping of monitors. Another contraction built, this one so intense she couldn't breathe through it. Her fingers dug into the hospital bed rails, her entire body tensing against the pain. "Marcus," she gasped when it passed. "What happened? The explosion? Was it Constantine?" Marcus's jaw tightened. It was a setup. The meeting location was rigged to blow the moment Victor entered. He realized it just in time, got most of his people out. But Constantine was watching, waiting. He detonated early when he saw them evacuating. "And Victor got hurt trying to save everyone else," Elena guessed. "He got hurt being Victor Moreau," Marcus corrected. "Never leaving a man behind, even when the smart play is to run." Elena would have smiled if another contraction wasn't building. "Is Constantine dead?" "Unknown," Marcus admitted. "The building came down, but we haven't found a body. Boss wants to assume he's alive until we have confirmation." Before Elena could respond, the door burst open and Victor appeared, and Elena's heart nearly stopped. He looked like he'd walked through fire. Literally. Burns covered his left arm, hastily bandaged but still seeping through the gauze. His face was cut and bruised, his shirt more blood than fabric, but his eyes, those ice blue eyes, were absolutely focused on her. "Sir, you can't be in here," a nurse protested, trying to block his path. You haven't been cleared by your attending physician. I'm not leaving, Victor said flatly, moving past her to Elena's bedside. His hand found hers, gripped it like a lifeline. I'm staying right here. Dr. Morrison appeared in the doorway, took one look at Victor, and sighed. Mr. Moreau, you're supposed to be in post-surgical observation. I'm fine, Victor said, never taking his eyes off Elena. I'm staying with her. You're bleeding through your bandages, Dr. Morrison pointed out. And you probably have a concussion, not to mention the smoke inhalation. I don't care, Victor interrupted. My child is being born. I'm staying. Dr. Morrison looked at Elena, who nodded desperately. Please, I need him here. The doctor studied them both for a long moment, then nodded. Fine, but you sit down before you fall down, Mr. Moreau, and if you pass out during delivery, I'm having you removed. Understood? Understood, Victor agreed, though Elena doubted he'd actually leave even if he did pass out. Marcus quietly exited, leaving them alone. Victor pulled a chair close to the bed, his good hand still gripping hers. His other arm hung stiffly at his side, clearly causing him pain he was too stubborn to acknowledge. You look terrible, Elena whispered. You look beautiful, Victor countered. Terrified and in pain, but beautiful. Another contraction hit, and Elena's grip on his hand tightened until she thought she might break his fingers. Victor didn't flinch, just leaned closer, murmuring words she couldn't quite hear over the roaring in her ears. When it passed, she was crying again. I'm so scared, Victor. What if something's wrong with the baby? What if coming early means our baby is a fighter, Victor said firmly. Just like you, just like me. Whatever happens, we face it together. Together, Elena repeated, needing to believe it. You promise you're okay? You're not just saying that to keep me calm? I'm not okay, Victor admitted. I'm burned and bruised and pretty sure I cracked a rib. But I'm alive, Elena. I'm here. That's what matters. Constantine. Doesn't matter right now, Victor interrupted. Right now, the only thing that matters is you and our baby. Everything else is just noise. Dr. Morrison returned with 2 other doctors and several nurses, all moving with practiced efficiency. All right, Elena, we're going to get you moved to the delivery room. The neonatal team is scrubbed in and ready. How are you feeling? Like I'm about to give birth 2 months early, Elena said, her attempt at humor falling flat. Fair enough, Dr. Morrison said with a small smile. Mr. Moreau, if you're staying, you'll need to scrub in. Can you manage that with your injuries? Victor was already standing. Just tell me where. 10 minutes later, Elena was in the delivery room, a space that somehow managed to be both sterile and warm, filled with equipment she didn't want to think too hard about. Victor stood beside her in surgical scrubs that didn't quite fit, his bandaged arm stiff, but his eyes alert and focused entirely on her. The contractions were coming faster now, each one a tidal wave of pain that left her gasping. Dr. Morrison checked her progress and nodded with satisfaction. You're at 8 centimeters, she announced. Not long now. How are you doing with the pain? I'm fine, Elena lied through gritted teeth. She's not fine, Victor said quietly. Give her something. I can handle it, Elena protested, even though she wasn't sure that was true. The baby, I don't want anything that might affect the baby. The epidural's perfectly safe, Dr. Morrison assured her. And given the stress your body's under, managing the pain might actually help the delivery go smoother. Elena looked at Victor, who nodded. Let them help you, Elena. You don't have to be strong through this. So she agreed to the epidural, letting the anesthesiologist work while Victor held her hand and murmured reassurances. Within minutes, the edge came off the pain. Not gone completely, but manageable, bearable. Better? Victor asked, brushing sweat-dampened hair from her forehead. Better, Elena confirmed. Are you sure you're okay to be here? You look pale. I'm not leaving, Victor said simply. I don't care if I pass out. I'm not missing this. Time became strange after that, measured in contractions and doctor's instructions, and the steady beep of monitors tracking their baby's heartbeat. Elena pushed when they told her to push, breathed when they told her to breathe, held on to Victor's hand like it was the only solid thing in a spinning world. I can see the head, Dr. Morrison announced. You're doing great, Elena. Just a few more pushes. I can't, Elena gasped, I can't do this. Yes, you can, Victor said, his voice steady despite the fact that he was swaying slightly on his feet. You're the strongest person I know, Elena. You can do anything. One more big push, Dr. Morrison encouraged. Come on, Elena. Your baby is right there. Elena gathered every ounce of strength she had left and pushed. The world narrowed to that single moment, the pain, the pressure, the desperate need to bring her child safely into the world. She pushed until she thought she might break, until Victor's hand was the only thing anchoring her to reality. And then, suddenly, a sound, a cry, small and indignant and absolutely perfect. "It's a boy," Dr. Morrison announced, holding up a tiny, wrinkled creature who was screaming his fury at the world. "You have a son!" Elena's vision blurred with tears as she watched the medical team work quickly, efficiently. They placed the baby on her chest for just a moment, long enough for her to feel his warmth, to count tiny fingers that wrapped instinctively around hers, to see eyes that were unfocused but searching. "Hi, baby," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Hi, sweetheart. We've been waiting for you." Victor's good arm came around both of them, his face pressed close to hers so she could feel his tears mixing with her own. "He's perfect," Victor said hoarsely. "Elena, he's perfect." But the moment was brief. The neonatal team stepped in, gentle but urgent. "We need to take him to the NICU," one of the doctors explained. "His breathing is a bit labored, nothing critical, but at 30 weeks his lungs need support." "Can I go with him?" Elena asked desperately as they lifted the baby from her chest. "You need to finish delivering the placenta," Dr. Morrison said gently. "But Mr. Moreau can go if he wants. One parent is allowed in the NICU." Victor looked torn, his gaze moving between Elena and the baby being placed in a mobile incubator. Elena made the decision for him. "Go," she said. "Stay with him. Make sure he's okay." "Elena, please," she interrupted. "I need to know someone's with him. I need to know he's not alone." Victor pressed a fierce kiss to her forehead. "I'll call you the second I know anything, I promise." Then he was following the neonatal team out of the delivery room, moving carefully but determinedly despite his injuries. Elena watched him go, feeling a piece of her heart leave with him. The next 20 minutes passed in a haze. Dr. Morrison completed the delivery, checked to make sure there were no complications, gave instructions Elena barely heard. All she could think about was her son, so small, so fragile, fighting for every breath in the NICU. "You did beautifully, doctor," Morrison said, helping Elena get cleaned up and moved to a recovery room. "Your son's vitals looked good despite the early arrival. The neonatal team is excellent. They'll take good care of him." "When can I see him?" Elena asked. "Once you're stable and cleared to move, probably in an hour or two. For now, you need to rest. Your body just went through significant trauma." But rest was impossible. Elena lay in the recovery room, staring at the ceiling, her arms aching with emptiness. She'd held her son for maybe 30 seconds. 30 seconds to memorize his face, to feel his weight, to understand that she would do absolutely anything to protect him. Her phone rang, Victor's name on the screen. "How is he?" Elena answered immediately. "Stable," Victor said, and she could hear the emotion he was trying to contain. "He's on oxygen support, but his vitals are strong. The doctors say he's fighting. 4 pounds, 3 ounces, 19 inches long." Elena closed her eyes, tears sliding down her temples. "Can you send me a picture?" "Already done. Check your messages." She pulled the phone away and opened the photo Victor had sent. Her breath caught. Their son lay in an incubator, tiny and vulnerable, with wires and tubes attached to his fragile body. But his eyes were open, unfocused but aware, and one hand was curled into a fist against his cheek. He looked like Victor, the same strong jawline, the same aristocratic nose, but his mouth was softer, more like hers. "He's beautiful," Elena whispered. "He's ours," Victor said, his voice rough. "Elena, when I saw him, when they put him in my arms for just a second before the incubator, I understood." "Understood what?" "Why you ran. Why you were so desperate to protect him. Because I would burn the world down for this child. I would destroy everything and everyone who posed even the slightest threat. And if that makes me a monster, then I'm a monster. But I'm a monster who will keep our son safe no matter what it costs. Elena heard the absolute conviction in his voice and felt something shift inside her. This wasn't the calculated, controlled Victor she'd known before. This was someone raw and unguarded, transformed by the sight of his own child. "What are we going to name him?" Elena asked softly. There was a pause. "I hadn't thought about it. Did you have something in mind?" Elena had spent months considering names, rejecting most of them as either too common or too unusual. But looking at that photo, at their tiny fighter in his plastic fortress, one name felt right. "Alexander," she said. "It means defender of men, and I think he's going to need to be strong, growing up in our world." "Alexander Moreau." Victor tested the name. "I like it. It's strong, dignified. He can shorten it to Alex if he wants to, or use the full name when he's commanding boardrooms." "You're already planning his corporate takeover?" Elena asked, but she was smiling. "I'm planning everything," Victor said. "His education, his security detail, his future, all of it. Because planning means believing he has a future, and right now I need to believe that." "Is he really okay?" Elena asked, needing the truth. "The doctors aren't just telling you what you want to hear." "He's in the NICU with premature lungs and underdeveloped systems," Victor said bluntly. "He'll be here for weeks, maybe months. There will be challenges, but he's breathing on his own with assistance. His heart is strong, and every doctor I've consulted says the prognosis is good." "How many doctors have you consulted in the last 20 minutes?" "4, Victor admitted. "I may have called in some favors. There's now a pediatric specialist flying in from Boston and a neonatologist from Johns Hopkins reviewing Alexander's charts remotely." Despite everything, Elena laughed. "Of course there is. Because why rely on just the hospital staff when you can assemble an entire medical dream team?" "He's my son," Victor said simply. "I'm not taking chances." A nurse entered Elena's recovery room carrying a wheelchair. "The NICU has cleared you for a visit if you're feeling up to it." Elena was already trying to sit up. "I'm up for it." The journey to the NICU felt endless, despite being only 2 floors up. The nurse wheeled her through corridors that all looked the same. Sterile white walls, fluorescent lighting, the antiseptic smell that marked every hospital in the world. Victor met them at the NICU entrance, having changed out of his surgical scrubs, but still visibly injured. "They're letting us both in," he said, "but only for 30 minutes. Alexander needs to rest, and so do you." The NICU was quieter than Elena expected. Hushed voices, soft beeping, the gentle whoosh of ventilators and oxygen machines, row after row of incubators, each one containing someone's tiny miracle or heartbreak. Alexander's incubator was in the back corner, surrounded by monitors and equipment. A nurse stood nearby, checking readings and making notes. She looked up when they approached and smiled. "You must be Mom and Dad." "I'm Sarah, Alexander's primary nurse for this shift. He's been doing great, very alert for a 30-weeker. Elena maneuvered her wheelchair as close to the incubator as possible, her eyes drinking in every detail of her son. He looked so small inside the clear plastic walls, so vulnerable. Wires connected him to monitors tracking his heart rate, oxygen levels, breathing. A feeding tube ran through his nose, but his eyes were open, tracking movement with unfocused curiosity. "Can I touch him?" Elena asked. "Of course," Sarah said, opening the small porthole on the side of the incubator. "Just be gentle. Preemies startle easily." Elena reached through the opening, her hand trembling as she stroked one finger down Alexander's arm. His skin was impossibly soft, impossibly warm. When her finger touched his palm, his tiny hand closed around it with surprising strength. "Hi, baby," Elena whispered. "It's Mommy. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Victor's hand covered her shoulder, and when Elena looked up, she saw tears streaming down his face. Not the controlled emotion he usually displayed, but raw, unfiltered feeling. He looked destroyed and rebuilt all at once. "Can I?" Victor asked Sarah, gesturing to the incubator. "Absolutely. Just wash your hands first. Infection control is critical with preemies." Victor scrubbed his hands at the nearby sink, wincing as the motion pulled at his burns. Then he opened the other porthole and reached in. his large hand dwarfing Alexander's entire body. "Hello, son," Victor said quietly. "I'm your father, and I want you to know something. I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of. I've hurt people. I've made choices that would horrify your mother if she knew the full truth. But from this moment forward, everything I do is for you, to keep you safe, to give you a world where you can be whoever you want to be. I swear it on my life." Elena watched her son's fingers curl around Victor's thumb, watched this dangerous man become utterly gentle, and felt something inside her settle. Whatever happened next, whatever battles they still had to fight, they would face them as a family. "He has your nose," Elena said softly. "He has your mouth," Victor countered. "And I suspect he's going to have your stubborn streak." "Definitely," Elena agreed, already trying to come into the world on his own schedule instead of waiting like he was supposed to. Sarah cleared her throat gently. "I hate to interrupt, but Mom needs to rest. You can come back in a few hours, and we'll update you on any changes." Elena wanted to protest, wanted to stay right here with her hand touching her son for the rest of her life. But exhaustion was crashing over her in waves, and her body was making it clear that recovery wasn't optional. "We'll be back," Victor promised Alexander. "Every day, as often as they'll let us. You're not alone in this fight, son. You have us." The nurse wheeled Elena back to her private room, another space that was far nicer than anything standard insurance would cover. Victor walked beside her, one hand on the wheelchair, even though his injuries must have been screaming for attention. "You need to see a doctor," Elena said once they were alone. "Your arm, Victor, it's still bleeding." "It can wait." "No, it can't." Elena caught his hand, forced him to look at her. "Alexander needs both of us healthy. He needs his father to be okay. Please. For him." That argument worked where nothing else would have. Victor nodded reluctantly. "I'll go get checked out, but I'm coming back. I'm staying here tonight." "The hospital has visiting hours, which don't apply to me," Victor interrupted. "I've already arranged for a cot to be brought in. I'm not leaving you alone. Not tonight. Not with Constantine still unaccounted for." Elena had almost forgotten about Constantine in the chaos of Alexander's birth. But the threat hadn't vanished just because their son had arrived. If anything, now they had even more to lose. "Do you think he'll come after Alexander?" Elena asked quietly. Victor's expression went cold and hard. "He can try. But between you, me, and our son, there are now 12 armed guards on this floor alone. Marcus has the entire hospital locked down tighter than a federal prison. Constantine would need an army to get close to Alexander." "And if he has an army? Then I'll burn it down," Victor said simply. "Every soldier, every weapon, every resource. I'll destroy all of it. Nobody touches our son, Elena. Nobody." A knock at the door interrupted them. Marcus entered, looking weary but alert. "Boss? We found something." Victor's posture changed immediately, shifting from concerned father to dangerous strategist. "Show me." Marcus pulled out a tablet, brought up security footage. This was captured 2 blocks from the explosion site, about 10 minutes after the blast. The video showed a man limping away from the destruction, his face partially obscured by soot and blood. But Elena recognized him from photos Victor had shown her. Konstantin Volkov, alive. "He's wounded," Marcus said. "Badly, from the look of it. But he got out." Victor watched the footage with cold calculation. "Track him. I want to know where he goes, who he contacts, what resources he has left. And I want a full damage assessment on both sides." "Already in progress," Marcus confirmed. "But boss, you need to know, the explosion made the news. Our name is attached to it. There's going to be scrutiny. Police, feds, probably international agencies given the Russian connection. Handle it," Victor said flatly. "Pay whoever needs to be paid. Lean on whoever needs to be leaned on. I want this buried so deep it never sees daylight." "Understood." Marcus glanced at Elena, then back to Victor. "Congratulations, by the way, on your son." Victor's expression softened fractionally. "Thank you. Now get out of here and find Constantine before he regroups." After Marcus left, silence fell over the room. Elena lay back on the hospital bed, exhaustion making her bones feel like lead, but her mind wouldn't quiet. Constantine was alive, the threat wasn't over, and somewhere in the NICU, her son, their son, was fighting to breathe, completely unaware of the danger surrounding him. How do we do this? Elena asked quietly. How do we raise a child in your world? How do we keep him safe when there will always be someone like Constantine trying to use him against you? Victor pulled the chair close to her bedside, sank into it with a wince. We adapt. We evolve. We build something stronger than anything Constantine or anyone else can tear down. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have, Victor said. Elena, I can't promise you safety. I can't promise you that there won't be threats or dangers or moments that terrify you. But I can promise you this. I will spend every resource, every connection, every ounce of power I have to protect our son. And when that's not enough, I'll find more. Elena turned her head to look at him, really look at him. The burns on his arm, the cuts on his face, the exhaustion in his eyes that went bone deep. He looked like a man who'd walked through hell and come out the other side still standing. He looked like a father. I'm sorry I ran, Elena said softly. I'm sorry I didn't give you the chance to be this before, to know about Alexander from the beginning. Don't apologize, Victor said. You did what you thought was right, what you thought would keep him safe. I can't fault you for that when it's exactly what I would have done. But I was wrong, Elena insisted. I thought I could protect him by keeping him away from you, by hiding us both. But all I did was make us vulnerable. If Constantine had found me before you did, she couldn't finish the sentence. Victor's hand found hers squeezed gently. He didn't. You're here. Alexander is here. We're together. That's what matters. What happens next? Elena asked. When we leave the hospital, where do we go? Wherever you want, Victor said. The penthouse is secure, but if you'd rather somewhere else, a house in the suburbs, a place upstate, something with a yard and normal neighbors, I'll make it happen. Elena almost laughed. Normal neighbors, as if anything about our life could be normal. It could be, Victor said quietly. Parts of it, anyway. Alexander can go to school, have friends, play sports, or learn piano, or whatever he wants to do. We can give him slices of normal, even if the foundation underneath isn't. You really believe that? I have to, Victor said, because the alternative is raising him in a fortress, and that's not a life. That's a prison. Elena thought about that, about the balance between protection and freedom, between security and living. It was the same calculation she'd been making since the moment she saw the positive pregnancy test, the same impossible equation with no clear solution. We'll figure it out, she said finally, together, one day at a time. Together, Victor agreed, one day at a time. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands linked, watching the city lights through the window. Somewhere in this building, their son was fighting his first battle. And somewhere out there, Constantine was wounded but alive, probably planning his next move. But for this moment, Elena let herself simply be. A mother. A woman who'd just given birth. A person who'd survived the worst day of her life and come out the other side with something precious and fragile and worth protecting. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new impossible choices. But tomorrow could wait. Tonight, she had Victor beside her and Alexander fighting in the NICU and the knowledge that somehow, against all odds, they were a family. Broken and battered and far from perfect. But theirs. 3 days after Alexander's birth, Elena was cleared to leave the hospital. Alexander wasn't. The doctors were optimistic but cautious. His lungs were improving, his weight was stabilizing, but he'd need at least another month in the NICU before they'd consider releasing him. Maybe longer. Premature babies operated on their own timeline, they explained, and rushing the process could be dangerous. Elena understood the medical reasoning. That didn't make leaving any easier. She stood beside Alexander's incubator, her hand through the porthole stroking his tiny chest, watching it rise and fall with mechanical assistance. He'd grown in just 3 days. Not much, but enough that she could see the difference. His skin had more color. His movements were stronger. He'd even opened his eyes when she sang to him, seeming to recognize her voice. We have to go, Elena, Victor said gently from behind her. He'd barely left the hospital himself, sleeping in her room on the uncomfortable cot, living on coffee and whatever food Marcus brought. His burns were healing, but slowly, and Elena suspected he was ignoring doctors' orders about rest and medication. I know, Elena whispered, but she didn't move. What kind of mother leaves her baby? The kind who needs to recover so she can be strong for him, Victor said, his hand settling on her shoulder. You've barely slept. You're not eating enough. Dr. Morrison said you need proper rest or you'll end up back here as a patient. I can rest here. Elena. Victor's voice was firm but kind. The nurses will call us immediately if anything changes. We're 10 minutes away, and we'll be back first thing tomorrow morning. Sarah, Alexander's primary nurse, looked up from her charts with a sympathetic smile. He's in excellent hands, I promise. We'll take good care of him overnight, and honestly, you look like you need a real bed and a hot meal more than anything else. Elena knew they were right. Her body was still recovering from childbirth, and the hospital chair wasn't doing her any favors. But the thought of being separated from Alexander, even by a few miles, made her chest ache. Talk to him, Victor suggested quietly. Tell him we'll be back. So Elena leaned close to the incubator, her voice soft. Hi, sweet boy. Mommy and Daddy have to go home for a little while, but we'll be back tomorrow. You keep being strong, okay? Keep fighting. We love you so much, Alexander. So much. Alexander's hand twitched, his tiny fingers curling and uncurling. Elena chose to believe he heard her, understood somehow that she wasn't abandoning him, just stepping away to gather her strength. The drive back to the penthouse was quiet. Victor had insisted on driving himself despite Marcus's protests, his bandaged arm managing the wheel with practiced ease. Elena watched the city slide past the windows, everything feeling surreal and distant. Marcus updated me while you were with Alexander, Victor said, breaking the silence. Constantine's gone to ground. We tracked him to a safe house in Brooklyn, but by the time our people arrived, he'd already moved. Elena's hand moved instinctively to her still tender abdomen. Do you think he'll try something, now that Alexander's born? I think he's wounded and regrouping, Victor said carefully, which makes him either more dangerous or less, depending on how desperate he is. We're treating him as an active threat until we have confirmation otherwise. Meaning? Meaning the security detail stays. Meaning we don't take unnecessary risks. Meaning I'm not letting you or Alexander out of my sight more than absolutely necessary. Elena should have bristled at the control in his voice. A week ago, she would have. But now, with Alexander vulnerable in the NICU and Constantine somewhere in the city planning who knew what, Victor's protectiveness felt less like a cage and more like armor. The penthouse felt empty when they arrived, too big, too quiet, missing the one person who should have been there. Elena stood in the living room, unsure what to do with herself. For 3 days, her entire world had been the NICU, the beeping monitors, the hushed voices, the smell of antiseptic and hope. Here, surrounded by luxury and silence, she felt untethered. You should eat something, Victor said, already moving toward the kitchen. Then sleep, real sleep, not the 2-hour stretches you've been managing at the hospital. I'm not hungry. Elena. Victor turned to face her, his expression gentle but unyielding. You're recovering from childbirth and you're supposed to be producing milk for when Alexander can breastfeed. The lactation consultant was very clear about nutrition requirements, so you're eating even if I have to sit here and watch every bite. Despite everything, Elena felt a smile tug at her lips. You're bossy when you're worried. I'm always bossy, Victor corrected. But yes, I'm worried. About you. About Alexander. About the fact that Constantine is still breathing. So, humor me. Eat something. Elena settled onto a bar stool while Victor prepared a plate. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, fresh bread. The same meal he'd made her that first night back, like he was trying to recreate that moment of peace before everything exploded. You're getting good at this, Elena observed as he set the food in front of her. The cooking thing. I've had practice this week, Victor said, pouring her a glass of water. Turns out hospital cafeteria food is terrible, and I needed something to do with my hands besides worry. Elena took a bite, chewing mechanically. The food was good. Better than good, actually, but it tasted like ash in her mouth. Everything felt wrong without Alexander here. Incomplete. Tell me something, she said after a few minutes of silence. About when you were young. Before all of this. Victor raised an eyebrow. Why? Because Alexander is going to ask someday. About his father, about where he came from. And I realized I don't actually know very much about your life before we met. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the counter. There's not much to tell. I was born in Moscow. My father was, well, businessman is the polite term. My mother died when I was 8. After that, it was just my father and his organization. Is your father still alive? Elena asked carefully. No, he died 15 years ago. Heart attack during a negotiation that went badly. Victor's expression was unreadable. I inherited everything. The business, the connections, the enemies. I was 22 and suddenly responsible for an empire built on things I didn't fully understand yet. That must have been terrifying. It was clarifying, Victor corrected. I learned very quickly that in my world, you're either the predator or the prey. There's no middle ground. Elena set down her fork. And which are you? I've been the predator for a long time, Victor said quietly. But meeting you, becoming a father, it's made me wonder if there's a third option I never considered. What option? Something else entirely, he said. Something that doesn't fit the binary, but I don't know what that looks like yet. Elena reached across the counter, her hand covering his. We'll figure it out, together. Victor turned his hand over, lacing their fingers together. I've been thinking about what you said, about Alexander growing up protected from the darkness. And I want that for him, Elena. I want him to have choices I never had, but I don't know how to give him that while still being who I am. Maybe you don't have to be who you are, Elena suggested carefully. Maybe you can become someone else, someone safer. You want me to leave the business. It wasn't a question. I want our son to have a father who comes home every night, Elena said. I want to not wonder if every phone call is someone telling me you're dead. I want normal, Victor, or as close to normal as we can manage. Victor pulled his hand away, standing up to pace in front of the windows. The city glittered below them, a maze of light and shadow. I've been making calls, he said after a long silence. Quietly, carefully, testing the waters about stepping back. Elena's breath caught. Seriously? It's not simple, Victor cautioned. You don't just walk away from what I've built. There are obligations, alliances, territories that would fall into chaos without management. But I've been working on a transition plan, putting trusted people in key positions, consolidating operations. It would take time, maybe a year, maybe more. But it's possible. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wasn't sure it was actually possible until yesterday, Victor admitted. And I didn't want to promise you something I couldn't deliver. But seeing Alexander holding him, realizing how fragile he is, it made me understand that you're right. I can't be both the man I've been and the father he needs. Something has to change. Elena stood, moving to stand beside him at the window. What about Constantine? He won't just let you walk away. Constantine is a problem I need to solve before any transition can happen, Victor said grimly. As long as he's alive, he's a threat. To me, to you, to Alexander. He needs to be neutralized. The word neutralized hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Elena knew what it meant, knew what Victor was willing to do to protect their family. When? She asked quietly. Soon, Victor said. Marcus is tracking his movements. The moment we have a clear shot. He stopped, glancing at her. I don't need to give you the details. No, Elena agreed. You don't. But Victor, be careful. Alexander needs his father. I need you to come back. Victor turned to face her fully, his hands framing her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything he was. I'm coming back. I swear it. Constantine made the mistake of threatening my family. That's not something I forgive or forget. They stood like that for a moment, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. Elena felt the tension in Victor's body, the coiled readiness of someone preparing for violence. But she also felt his warmth, his solid presence, the way his hands trembled slightly against her skin. I love you, she said, the words slipping out before she could second-guess them. I know I never said it before I left. I know I was too scared or too proud or too something, but I love you, Victor Moreau, and that terrifies me more than anything else. Victor's eyes closed briefly, and when they opened again, Elena saw something raw and vulnerable in their depths. I love you too. I've loved you since the moment you looked at me like I was just a man instead of a monster. And I'll love you until the day I die, which better be decades from now, in a bed, surrounded by grandchildren. Despite everything, Elena laughed, Grandchildren? We have to get through raising one child first. We'll manage, Victor said with more confidence than she felt. We're both stubborn enough to figure it out. Her phone buzzed, a text from Sarah at the NICU. Elena's heart jumped, but the message was reassuring. Alexander had a good feeding. His oxygen levels were stable. He was sleeping peacefully. Attached was a photo of their son, his tiny face relaxed in sleep, looking impossibly small in the incubator. He's okay, Elena said, showing Victor the phone. He's doing okay. Victor studied the photo with an intensity that made Elena's chest tight. He looks like you when you sleep, peaceful, like the world can't touch you. He looks like both of us, Elena corrected. The best parts, hopefully. All parts of you are the best parts, Victor said simply. Elena's phone buzzed again, this time a call. Marcus. Victor answered it on speaker. Boss, we have movement. Constantine just surfaced at a location in Queens. He's meeting with someone. We're running facial recognition now. Victor's entire demeanor changed, shifting from gentle father to dangerous strategist in a heartbeat. How many men does he have with him? Looks like 4, maybe 5. He's wounded still, moving carefully. This might be our window. Assemble the team, Victor ordered. I want full tactical gear. And Marcus, I want him alive if possible. I have questions that need answering. Understood. ETA, 30 minutes. Victor ended the call and turned to Elena, his expression apologetic. I have to go. I know. Elena forced herself to sound calm, even though panic was clawing up her throat. Just, please be careful. Please come back. Always, Victor promised. He kissed her, fierce and quick, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. Then he was moving toward his office, already making calls, organizing resources, becoming the man who commanded an empire built on shadows and violence. Elena watched him go, feeling helpless and terrified. She wanted to beg him to stay, to send someone else, to choose safety over revenge. But she understood now, in a way she hadn't before, that this wasn't about revenge. This was about protection, about eliminating a threat so complete that their son could grow up without looking over his shoulder. 20 minutes later, Victor emerged dressed in tactical gear that made him look like something from a military operation. Kevlar vest, weapons concealed but clearly present, his expression cold and focused. There are 12 guards stationed throughout the building, he said, all business now. Marcus left 2 men specifically assigned to this floor. Do not open the door for anyone except me or Marcus. Do not leave the penthouse. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call me immediately. Victor, promise me, Elena. His hands gripped her shoulders. Promise me you'll stay safe. I can't do what I need to do if I'm worried about you. I promise, Elena said. Now you promise me you'll come back. I promise. He kissed her forehead, then stepped into the elevator. The doors closed, and he was gone. Elena stood in the suddenly empty penthouse, listening to the silence press against her ears. She tried to distract herself, television, a book, the laptop Victor had given her to start researching her art history coursework. But nothing held her attention. All she could think about was Victor walking into danger while Alexander fought his own battles in the NYCU, and she stood here, useless and afraid. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Elena almost didn't answer, remembering Victor's warnings, but something made her swipe to accept. Hello? Elena Carter. The voice was rough, accented, unmistakably Russian. We meet at last, though only by phone. Ice flooded her veins. Constantine. Very good. Victor has told you about me then. Warned you, no doubt, about the dangerous Russian who wants to destroy him. What do you want? Elena kept her voice steady through sheer force of will. Right now? I want Victor Moreau to suffer. I want him to know what it feels like to lose a son. But I'm a practical man, Elena. I'm willing to negotiate. I'm not negotiating anything with you. Not even for your son's safety? Constantine's voice went soft, dangerous. Little Alexander, fighting so hard in his incubator, so fragile, so vulnerable. It would be such a shame if something happened to him. Elena's hand moved to her mouth, holding back a scream. You wouldn't. You couldn't get near him. Couldn't I? Constantine interrupted. Hospitals are such chaotic places. So many people coming and going. Doctors, nurses, visitors. Who would notice one more face in the crowd? Who would think to check everyone who passes through the NICU doors? Victor will kill you, Elena said, her voice shaking with rage and terror. If you touch our son, he will hunt you to the ends of the earth and make you beg for death. I'm counting on it, Constantine said. That's the point, you see. I don't want a quick death for Victor Moreau. I want him to suffer first, to know what I felt when I lost my boy. And you, Elena, you're going to help me. Go to hell. Here's what's going to happen, Constantine continued, as if she hadn't spoken. You're going to call Victor. Tell him you know where I am. Feed him the location I'm about to text you. And when he arrives, well, let's just say I have a surprise waiting. You want me to lure him into a trap? Elena said flatly. I want you to choose, Constantine corrected. Victor's life or your son's. Because if Victor doesn't show up at that location in the next hour, I have people in position at the hospital who will ensure Alexander doesn't survive the night. But if Victor comes alone, unarmed, ready to negotiate, I'll let your son live. You have my word. Your word means nothing. Perhaps, Constantine acknowledged. But it's the only currency we're trading in right now, so what will it be, Elena? Do you save the man you love, or the son you both created? The line went dead. Elena stood frozen, her phone clutched in her shaking hand. This couldn't be happening, couldn't be real. But even as her mind rejected it, a text came through with an address in Queens and a simple message. 1 hour. Victor alone, or the baby dies. Her first instinct was to call Victor, to warn him about the trap. But what if Constantine was serious? What if he really did have people at the hospital ready to hurt Alexander? The NICU had security, but it wasn't designed to stop a determined attack. And if something happened to their son because she didn't cooperate, Elena's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. She needed to think, needed to figure out a way to protect both Victor and Alexander. But her mind was spinning, terror and adrenaline making coherent thought nearly impossible. She called Marcus. It went to voicemail, probably because he was with Victor on whatever operation they'd mounted. She left a frantic message explaining about Constantine's call, about the threat to Alexander, about the impossible choice. Then she called the NICU. Sarah answered on the second ring, her voice cheerful. Elena, we were just about to call you. Alexander had another good feeding and… Sarah, listen to me very carefully, Elena interrupted. I need you to put the NICU on lockdown, right now. No one in or out except established staff. There's been a credible threat against my son. Sarah's voice changed immediately, going professional and sharp. What kind of threat? Someone claims they have people in position to hurt Alexander. I don't know if it's real, but I can't take the chance. Please, Sarah, lock down the NICU and call security. Already doing it, Sarah said. Elena could hear her moving, could hear the urgency in her voice as she called for help. We're initiating Code Purple. That's our highest security protocol. Alexander will be moved to a secure room with armed guards. No one gets near him, Elena, I promise you. Thank you, Elena breathed. Thank you so much. Do you want us to call the police? Elena hesitated. Police meant questions, investigations, attention that Victor's world couldn't afford. Not yet. Just keep Alexander safe. I'll handle the rest. She ended the call and immediately tried Victor again. This time he answered, his voice tight with focus. Elena, I can't talk right now. We're about to… It's a trap, Elena said quickly. Constantine just called me. He knows where you are. He wants you to come to a different location, alone. Or he says he'll have Alexander killed. There was a brief silence, then Victor's voice came back cold and deadly. Where's the location? Victor, no. It's obviously a trap. He's trying to separate you from your security team so he can… Where is it, Elena? She closed her eyes, hating this, hating all of it. Queens, he texted me an address, but I already called the NICU. They've locked down. Alexander is safe. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do, Victor said quietly. Because if there's even a chance Constantine has people at that hospital, I can't take the risk. Send me the address. Victor, please. Send it, he commanded. And stay in the penthouse. Marcus will have someone posted outside within 5 minutes. Do not leave. Do not answer the door. Understood? This is exactly what he wants, Elena pleaded. He's trying to isolate you to— I know what he's doing, Victor interrupted. And I'm going anyway, because our son's life is worth more than my caution. Send the address, Elena. Now. With trembling fingers, Elena forwarded Konstantin's text. She heard Victor receive it, heard him relay the information to someone, probably Marcus. Victor, she said desperately, I love you. Please don't do this. Please just come home. I love you too, Victor said. And I'm coming home, with Konstantin's head on a pike if that's what it takes to keep our family safe. The line went dead. Elena sank onto the couch, her entire body shaking. She'd just sent the man she loved into an ambush, had potentially signed his death warrant by passing along information she knew was designed to trap him. But what choice did she have? If Konstantin was bluffing about the hospital and Victor didn't show up, nothing happened. But if he was serious, if he really did have people ready to hurt Alexander, and she'd done nothing, she couldn't live with that. Couldn't bear the thought of their son dying because she'd chosen Victor's safety over his. So she'd made the only choice she could. The impossible choice every parent faced when their child's life hung in the balance. She'd gambled with Victor's life to save their son's. And now all she could do was wait to find out if she'd just destroyed everything. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. Elena paced the penthouse, her phone clutched in her hand, waiting for news. Any news. A text. A call. Something to tell her Victor was okay. That Alexander was safe. That Konstantin was dead or captured or neutralized. But her phone stayed silent. She checked the NICU camera feed Victor had arranged for her. A live stream that showed Alexander's incubator. He was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the chaos swirling around him. 2 armed guards stood visible in the frame now, their presence both reassuring and terrifying. An hour passed. Then another. Elena called Marcus 3 times, texted him a dozen more. Nothing. She tried Victor's phone and got voicemail. The silence was worse than any news could have been. Finally, at nearly midnight, her phone rang. Marcus. Is he alive? Elena asked instead of hello. He's alive, Marcus said, and Elena's knees gave out with relief. Wounded, but alive. We're en route to the hospital now. What happened? Is Konstantin dead? Marcus said flatly. Victor got to him before the trap could spring. But it was close, Elena. Too close. The boss took a bullet to the shoulder and there was an explosion that— He paused. He'll be okay. But he needs surgery to remove the bullet. I'm coming to the hospital, Elena said, already moving toward the bedroom to grab clothes. The guards will escort you, Marcus confirmed. I'll meet you in the emergency room. Elena dressed in record time, her hands still shaking but her mind finally clear. Victor was alive. Alexander was safe. Konstantin was dead. The nightmare was finally over. Wasn't it? The guards drove her to the hospital in silence, their presence a reminder that danger might be over, but caution wasn't. Elena rushed through the emergency room entrance, searching for Marcus. He was standing outside a surgical suite, his clothes torn and bloody, his expression grim but relieved. He's in surgery now. Doctors say it's straightforward. Bullet missed major arteries, just lodged in muscle tissue. He'll be fine. Can I see him? After? He's insisting on it, Marcus said with a tired smile. Threatened to leave AMA if we didn't bring you here. Elena sank into a waiting room chair, adrenaline finally giving way to exhaustion. Tell me what happened. All of it. Marcus sat beside her, his voice low and steady as he recounted the night's events. How they'd realized Konstantin's meeting location was a diversion. How Victor had figured out the real trap at the Queen's address Elena had sent. How he'd gone in anyway, with backup positioned strategically, and confronted Konstantin directly. It ended in a warehouse, Marcus said quietly. Konstantin tried to detonate explosives that would have brought the whole building down. But the boss was faster. He got Konstantin first, then got himself and the team out before the blast. Konstantin didn't make it. Good, Elena said, and meant it. I know that makes me terrible, but good. He threatened our son. He deserved whatever he got. You're not terrible, Marcus said gently. You're a mother protecting her child. There's nothing more human than that. They sat in silence while doctors worked on Victor. Elena checked her phone obsessively, monitoring the NICU camera feed, making sure Alexander was still safe and sleeping. Sarah sent updates every 30 minutes. All stable, all good, the lockdown holding firm. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only one, a surgeon emerged. "Miss Carter, Mr. Moreau is out of surgery. Everything went smoothly. He's in recovery now and you can see him shortly." Relief flooded through Elena so completely she thought she might cry. "He's okay? Really okay? He'll be sore for a while and he'll need to take it easy during recovery. But yes, he's fine. Tough man, your Mr. Moreau. Most people would be in shock after what he went through tonight. He was giving us instructions about security protocols while we prepped him for surgery." Despite everything, Elena laughed. "That sounds like him." 20 minutes later, she was escorted to Victor's recovery room. He was already awake, of course he was, arguing with a nurse about discharge timelines. "You just had surgery," the nurse was saying firmly. "You need at least 24 hours of observation before we even discuss—" "Elena." Victor's eyes found hers and everything else fell away. "You're here." "Where else would I be?" Elena moved to his bedside, her hand finding his carefully. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got shot and then blown up," Victor said honestly. "But alive. We're both alive, and Alexander is safe. That's what matters." The nurse huffed and left them alone. Elena pulled a chair close to the bed, studying Victor's face. He looked exhausted, battered, but triumphant somehow, like he'd finally slayed the dragon that had been chasing them. "Is he really dead?" Elena asked quietly. "Constantine?" "Very," Victor confirmed. "Marcus identified the body personally. It's over, Elena. The threat is over." She wanted to believe him, wanted to let relief wash away the last 7 months of fear and running. But something held her back. Some instinct that said their problems couldn't be solved so neatly. "What about his organization?" she asked. "His people? Won't they come after you for revenge?" "I've already been making calls," Victor said. "Constantine's death leaves a power vacuum. I've offered to help fill it peacefully. Most of his lieutenants are pragmatic men. They'll take the deal rather than risk war. And if they don't, then Marcus handles them," Victor said simply. "But I don't think it'll come to that. Constantine was operating alone at the end. His vendetta against me wasn't shared by his entire organization. They'll be relieved to move on." Elena hoped he was right, prayed he was right, because she didn't know how much more of this she could take. The fear, the violence, the constant threat hanging over their heads. "I want to see Alexander," Victor said suddenly. "Is he still in lockdown?" "Yes, but I can have Sarah clear you. Give me a second." Elena texted quickly, got an immediate response. "She says you can come up as soon as you're cleared to move, which, according to your surgeon, won't be for at least 24 hours. Victor's expression turned stubborn. "I'm not waiting 24 hours. "Victor, I just killed a man to protect our son," he said quietly. "I'm not spending one more second away from him than absolutely necessary, so either they clear me to move or I'm leaving AMA. Elena knew that tone. Knew that nothing, not doctors, not common sense, not the risk of ripping his stitches, would change his mind. "Fine," she sighed. "But you're using a wheelchair. Non-negotiable. Deal." It took another hour of arguing with medical staff, signing forms, and promising to return if there were any complications. But finally, Victor was settled in a wheelchair with Elena pushing him toward the elevator. The NICU was still on lockdown, but Sarah met them at the secure entrance with a smile. "I heard we have a very determined visitor. Come on back. Alexander's been asking for you." "He can't talk," Elena pointed out. "No, but he's been fussy," Sarah said, "like he knows something's not right. Babies are perceptive that way." She led them to Alexander's incubator. Urs, now in a private room with armed guards still stationed outside. Their son was awake, his tiny fists waving in the air, his face scrunched in what looked like annoyance. "Hey, little man," Victor said softly, reaching through the porthole. "I'm back, just like I promised." Alexander's hand wrapped around Victor's finger with surprising strength, and maybe it was Elena's imagination, but she swore their son relaxed at his father's touch. "We're all here," Elena whispered, her hand covering Victor's. "We're together. We're safe." "We're safe," Victor echoed. "Finally." They stood like that for a long time. Three people connected through plastic walls and hope and love that had survived impossible odds. And for the first time since that night in the diner when Victor had walked back into her life, Elena let herself believe it might actually be true. The danger might really be over. Their family might actually have a future together. 6 weeks after Konstantine's death, Alexander came home. Elena stood in the nursery Victor had created while she'd been at the hospital, a room painted in soft grays and whites, filled with furniture that was both beautiful and functional. A crib that probably cost more than her old car, a changing table stocked with supplies, a rocking chair positioned by the window where she could watch the city while feeding their son. It was perfect, almost aggressively perfect, like Victor had poured all his anxiety about being a good father into creating the ideal space. "You think you'll like it?" Victor asked from the doorway. He was still healing from the gunshot wound, moving carefully to avoid pulling stitches, but the doctors had cleared him for light activity, which, in Victor's case, meant obsessively preparing for Alexander's homecoming. "He's 6 weeks old," Elena said with a smile. "He won't care about the decor, but yes, it's beautiful. You did good." Victor moved into the room, his hand trailing over the crib rail. "I keep thinking about what you said, about him growing up protected from the darkness, and I wonder if creating this perfect room is enough, or if I'm just painting over problems instead of actually solving them." Elena crossed to him, her hand settling over his. "You've done more than paint over problems, Victor. You've restructured your entire organization. You've put distance between yourself and the illegal operations. You're transitioning to legitimate businesses." "It's taking longer than I wanted," Victor admitted. "There are connections that can't be severed cleanly, obligations that need to be fulfilled carefully, but I'm working on it. Every day I'm working toward becoming someone Alexander can be proud of." "He's already going to be proud of you," Elena said softly. "Because you're his father. Because you're here. That's what matters." Victor turned to face her fully, his expression vulnerable in a way she rarely saw. "What if I'm terrible at this? At being a father?" "Then you'll learn," Elena said simply. "The same way I'm learning to be a mother. We'll figure it out together, one disaster at a time." Despite his obvious nerves, Victor smiled. "One disaster at a time. I can work with that." The doorbell chimed. Marcus, arriving with the final preparations for bringing Alexander home. He'd arranged everything, a pediatric nurse to help during the transition, security protocols that wouldn't feel like living in a fortress, supplies and equipment that had been vetted by 3 different doctors. "Car seats installed," Marcus reported. "Medical team is on standby, and I've triple-checked the route from here to the hospital. No security concerns." "You know you don't have to be our personal assistant," Elena said gently. "You've done so much already." Marcus shrugged. "The boss saved my life more times than I can count. Helping him bring his son home is the least I can do." An hour later, Elena sat in the back of the SUV with Alexander in her arms, finally freed from monitors and tubes and the clinical smell of the NICU. He was still tiny, barely 6 pounds after 6 weeks of growth, but strong, fighting. Every day getting a little bigger, a little stronger, a little more ready for the world. Victor sat beside her, his hand constantly reaching out to touch Alexander's head, his chest, checking that he was real and breathing and actually coming home with them. "He's okay," Elena said for the 3rd time. "The doctors cleared him. He's ready." "I know," Victor said, but his hand didn't stop moving. "I just keep thinking about how small he is, how fragile. What if something happens and we're not in a hospital?" "That's what the pediatric nurse is for," Elena reminded him. "And the monitor that tracks his breathing, and the direct line to Dr. Morrison. Victor, we have more medical support than most people get in an actual hospital." "I know," Victor repeated. "I know I'm being irrational, but he's my son, Elena. I can't help it." Elena understood completely. She'd barely slept since the doctors had given them the discharge date, terrified of all the ways things could go wrong. But she'd also learned in 6 weeks of watching Alexander fight and grow that fear couldn't be allowed to paralyze them. They had to trust in the doctors, in themselves, in Alexander's strength. The penthouse felt different when they arrived, warmer somehow, more alive. The nurse Victor had hired, a competent woman in her 50s named Patricia, met them at the door with a reassuring smile. "Welcome home," she said, her eyes soft as she looked at Alexander. "Let's get this young man settled, shall we?" The first few hours were a blur of feeding schedules and diaper changes and figuring out how to navigate this new reality. Alexander cried when he was hungry, which sent Victor into a near panic the first time, until Patricia calmly explained that crying was normal and healthy. "You're going to hear a lot of crying in the next few months," Patricia said with amusement as Victor hovered anxiously. "Babies cry. It's how they communicate. You'll learn to tell the difference between 'I'm hungry' crying and 'I'm tired' crying and 'I just want attention' crying." "There are different types?" Victor looked genuinely alarmed. "There are many types," Patricia confirmed. "But you'll figure it out. Parents always do." By evening, Patricia had coached them through several feedings, demonstrated the proper swaddling technique, and assured them at least a dozen times that Alexander was perfectly healthy and they were doing fine. "I'm going to head out for the night," she said finally, "but I'm just a phone call away if you need me. Try to get some sleep when the baby sleeps. You're going to need it." After she left, Elena and Victor sat on the couch, Alexander sleeping peacefully in Elena's arms. The city stretched out below them, lights twinkling in the darkness, the world continuing on completely unaware that their entire universe had just shifted. "We're parents," Elena said wonderingly. "We have a son. This is real." "This is real," Victor echoed. He looked exhausted and terrified and happier than Elena had ever seen him. "We're actually doing this." "We're doing it badly," Elena corrected with a tired laugh. "Did you see how long it took us to change that diaper? Patricia had to walk us through it like we'd never seen a baby before." "To be fair, I haven't spent much time around babies," Victor said. "They're small and loud and surprisingly difficult to dress." "They are," Elena agreed. "But he's ours, Victor. He's ours and he's home, and he's safe." "Safe," Victor repeated, the word heavy with meaning. "I've been thinking about that, about what safe really means for Alexander." "What do you mean?" Victor shifted carefully, mindful of his healing shoulder. "Constantine is dead, but the world I've lived in doesn't disappear just because one threat is eliminated. There will always be people who see Alexander as leverage, as a way to get to me. And I can surround him with guards and security systems, but that's not the same as actually being safe." "So what are you saying?" Elena asked carefully. "I'm saying I want to accelerate the timeline," Victor said, "for stepping back from the business, for transitioning to something legitimate. I don't want Alexander growing up wondering if his father is going to come home. I don't want him to ever see the things I've had to do." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "You're serious? You're really going to walk away?" "I'm really going to try," Victor corrected. "It won't be overnight. These things take time. But I've already started positioning trusted people to take over key operations, and I'm liquidating some assets to fund legitimate businesses, real estate development, technology investments, things that won't put a target on our family." "What about the people who won't want you to leave?" Elena pressed. "The ones who depend on your leadership?" "Most of them will be fine," Victor said. "I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm setting up succession plans that ensure continuity. And the few who might object, well, Marcus is handling those conversations." Elena didn't ask what that meant. She'd learned that some parts of Victor's world were better left unexamined. "How long do you think it will take? The full transition?" 6 months? Maybe a year, Victor estimated. "There are contracts that need to be honored, relationships that need to be carefully unwound. But by Alexander's first birthday, I want to be able to say I'm completely out. Just a businessman with a family and a relatively boring life." "You'll hate boring," Elena said with a small smile. "Maybe," Victor acknowledged, "but I'll love being here more, being present for Alexander's first words, his first steps, all the moments I would have missed if I was constantly managing crises and putting out fires." Alexander stirred in Elena's arms, making the small grunting sounds that usually preceded crying. Elena shifted him, bouncing gently until he settled back to sleep. "You're good at that," Victor observed. "I've had 6 weeks of practice in the NICU," Elena said. "You'll get the hang of it too." "I hope so." Victor reached out, his finger tracing Alexander's tiny hand. Their son's fingers immediately curled around his father's, that instinctive grip that never failed to make Elena's heart squeeze. "I want to be good at this, at being his father. It matters more than anything I've ever done." You will be, Elena promised. You already are. Victor, you killed a man to protect him. You're restructuring your entire life for him. That's not something a bad father does. That's the bare minimum, Victor said quietly. Keeping him alive, keeping him safe, that's just the foundation. I want to be more than that. I want to be someone he looks up to, someone he trusts, someone who doesn't scare him. Elena heard the vulnerability in his voice, the fear that he'd passed down something dark to their son just by being his father. Alexander isn't going to be afraid of you. He's going to love you, because you're going to show him every day what it means to be a good man. I'm not a good man, Elena. You're trying to be, she corrected. For him, for us. That's what matters. Not where you've been, but where you're choosing to go. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, taking turns holding Alexander, marveling at how something so small could completely reorganize their priorities. Elena watched Victor study their son's face like he was memorizing every detail, and she saw the transformation happening in real time. Victor Moreau was becoming someone new, someone softer, someone capable of putting down his armor because he'd found something worth being vulnerable for. The next few weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings, and learning to navigate life as new parents. Patricia came during the day to help and provide guidance, but the nights were theirs alone. Victor insisted on taking turns with the night feedings despite Elena's protest that he needed to heal. I'm healing fine, he'd argue at 2 a.m, taking Alexander from her so she could get a few hours of sleep. And I'm not missing this. I'm not being the father who leaves everything to the mother. Elena would watch from the doorway sometimes, unable to sleep despite exhaustion, just to see Victor pacing the nursery with Alexander in his arms. He talked to their son in a low murmur, telling him stories about Elena, about how they met, about the future he was building for them. Sometimes he'd speak in Russian, the language of his childhood, words that sounded harsh but were delivered with such gentleness they became lullabies. During the day, life developed a rhythm. Elena started her online coursework, squeezing in lectures and reading between Alexander's naps. Victor worked from home more often than not, conducting business from his office while staying close enough to help when needed. Marcus came by regularly, updating Victor on the transition progress, and staying to hold Alexander with a surprising gentleness. You're getting soft, Marcus teased Victor one afternoon, watching the boss carefully burp his son. I'm getting smart, Victor corrected. Soft would be letting my guard down. I'm just redistributing my priorities. Fair enough, Marcus said. For what it's worth, boss, the transition is going smoother than expected. Most of your associates understand the position you're in. The ones who don't, well, they're learning to understand. Elena didn't ask what that meant. She was learning to exist in the space between Victor's two worlds, the one he was leaving behind and the one he was building for their future. It wasn't always comfortable, but it was theirs. 3 months after bringing Alexander home, Elena woke to find Victor's side of the bed empty. She checked the time, 4 a.m, too early even for Alexander's usual feeding. She found Victor in the nursery, sitting in the rocking chair with their son in his arms, both of them awake and watching each other. Couldn't sleep? Elena asked softly from the doorway. He was fussy, Victor said. I didn't want him to wake you. Elena crossed to them, perching on the arm of the chair. Alexander was alert but calm, his eyes, still that unfocused blue of infancy, tracking between his parents' faces. He was getting bigger, stronger. His cheeks had filled out, his limbs had grown chubby with healthy baby fat. He looked less like a fragile preemie and more like a regular baby. What were you thinking about? Elena asked, reading the contemplative expression on Victor's face. About how different everything is now, Victor said quietly. 3 months ago, I was someone else entirely. Someone who solved problems with violence, someone who measured success in territory controlled and enemies eliminated. And now I'm sitting here at 4 a.m, holding my son and realizing that this, right here, is the only success that actually matters. The transition is going well then? Elena guessed. Better than expected, Victor confirmed. I'm almost completely out of the problematic operations. Most of what's left is legitimate business that just needs proper management. Marcus is taking over the few remaining connections that need careful handling. How does that feel? Letting go? Victor was quiet for a moment, his hand gentle on Alexander's back. Terrifying. Liberating, like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff and choosing to jump, trusting that there's something better waiting below. But when I look at Alexander, when I imagine him growing up asking what his father does for a living, I want to have an answer that doesn't make him afraid or ashamed. "You're going to," Elena said, her hand covering his. "You're already doing it." Alexander made a small noise, not quite a cry, just a sound of awareness. Victor lifted him higher, supporting his head with practiced ease now, and smiled when their son's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile or might have been gas. "Hello, little man," Victor said softly. "You have no idea how much you've changed everything, do you? How you took two people who were falling apart and gave them a reason to build something better." "He's very wise for 3 months old," Elena said with a smile. "He is," Victor agreed seriously. "Look at him. Already knows how to get what he wants. Already has us completely wrapped around his tiny fingers. He's going to be dangerous when he grows up." "He's going to be loved," Elena corrected. "That's what matters." They stayed like that for a while, the three of them existing in the quiet pre-dawn darkness. These were the moments Elena treasured most. Not the grand gestures or expensive gifts, but the simple intimacy of being together, of watching Victor transform from the dangerous man she'd run from into the devoted father she'd barely dared to hope for. As summer turned to fall, Alexander grew and changed with startling speed. He smiled, real smiles, not gas, when Victor came home. He laughed when Elena made silly faces. He rolled over, grabbed toys, started showing the personality that had been hidden beneath premature fragility. Victor kept his promise about the business transition. By Alexander's 6-month birthday, he divested himself of every illegal operation, leaving only legitimate holdings that he managed through proper channels. The change was remarkable. He came home earlier, slept better, carried less tension in his shoulders. "I had a meeting today," Victor said one evening while they were giving Alexander a bath, "with a real estate development firm about a partnership on luxury condos downtown." "That sounds very legitimate and boring," Elena teased, supporting Alexander's head while Victor carefully washed their son's squirming body. "It was," Victor agreed, "completely, mind-numbingly boring. And it was perfect. No guns, no threats, no wondering if the other party was planning to betray me. Just numbers and contracts and normal business negotiations." "You like it," Elena observed. "I do," Victor admitted. "More than I thought I would. There's something satisfying about building instead of just controlling, about creating things that will last instead of just managing crisis after crisis." Alexander splashed, sending water over both of them. Victor laughed, a sound that still surprised Elena with its genuine warmth, and lifted their son out of the baby tub. "You're trouble," Victor told Alexander seriously, "just like your mother." "I'm trouble?" Elena protested, wrapping Alexander in a towel. "I'm not the one who brought organized crime into our relationship." "Fair point," Victor conceded. "But you're the one who ran away while pregnant and made me chase you across the city." "I had good reasons," Elena reminded him. "You did," Victor agreed, his expression softening. "And I don't blame you for any of it. You were protecting our son. I can't fault you for that when it's exactly what I would have done." After Alexander was asleep, Elena and Victor settled on the couch with wine, her first glass since before pregnancy. Victor had been saving a special bottle for when she was cleared to drink again, and they were celebrating both that milestone and the fact that Alexander had gone 4 hours between feedings the previous night. "I've been thinking," Victor said, swirling his wine, "about what comes next. For us." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we've been so focused on surviving, on keeping Alexander safe, on managing the transition, on just getting through each day, that we haven't talked about the future. Our future, beyond just being parents." Elena set down her glass. "What kind of future did you have in mind?" Victor pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box that made Elena's breath catch. "The kind where I do this properly, where I ask instead of just assuming, where I give you the choice I never really gave you before." He opened the box, revealing a ring that was both simple and stunning. A single diamond, flawless and perfectly cut, set in platinum. Not ostentatious, not designed to show off wealth, just beautiful. "Elena Carter," Victor said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. 7 months ago, I walked into a diner and found you carrying my son. I tried to command my way back into your life because that's all I knew how to do. I made demands and threats and used Alexander as justification for control. But somewhere along the way, between his birth and bringing him home and learning to change diapers at 2 in the morning, I realized something. I don't want to own you. I don't want to control you. I just want to be with you, to build a life with you, to raise our son together and maybe give him siblings someday, and grow old arguing about whose turn it is to handle the night feeding. Elena was crying now, tears streaming down her face while she laughed at the same time. So I'm asking, Victor continued, not demanding, not using our son as leverage, just asking, as a man who loves you more than he knows how to express. Will you marry me? Will you choose this life we're building? Choose me. Choose us. Elena looked at the ring, then at Victor, then at the baby monitor showing Alexander sleeping peacefully in his crib. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the fear, the running, the impossible choices. She thought about Victor in the NICU, holding their premature son with trembling hands. Thought about him at 4 in the morning, pacing the nursery and whispering promises in Russian. Thought about the man he'd been versus the man he was becoming. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I choose this. All of it. Victor's hands shook slightly as he slid the ring onto her finger. Then he was kissing her, fierce and gentle all at once, and Elena tasted salt from both their tears. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this, Victor promised against her lips. I know you will, Elena said, because you're not the same man who walked into that diner demanding I come home. You're someone better, someone I'm proud to build a future with. They made love that night for the first time since before Alexander's birth, slow and careful, relearning each other's bodies, finding new tenderness in old familiarity. And when Alexander cried at 3 in the morning, they both got up, working together to change and feed him, their new engagement ring catching the nursery light. The wedding happened 2 months later, small and private, just Marcus and Patricia and a few trusted friends. Elena wore a simple dress that accommodated her still recovering body, and Victor looked devastating in a tailored suit. Alexander attended in a tiny outfit that matched his father's, sleeping peacefully through the ceremony in Patricia's arms. They exchanged vows in the penthouse, with the city spread out below them like a kingdom they'd fought to protect. But the words Victor spoke weren't about possession or control. They were about partnership, about choosing each other every day, about building something that would last beyond the darkness they'd both survived. I promise to be the father Alexander deserves, Victor said, his voice thick with emotion, and the husband you deserve. I promise to choose you every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I promise to leave behind the man I was and become the man our family needs me to be. Elena's vows were simpler but no less powerful. I promise to trust you, even when fear tells me to run. I promise to believe in the future we're building, even when the past tries to drag us back. I promise to love you, not despite who you've been, but because of who you're choosing to become. When they kissed as husband and wife, Alexander woke up and started crying, making everyone laugh. It was perfect in its imperfection, real and messy and theirs. The months that followed settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Victor's business ventures thrived under legitimate management. Elena finished her degree coursework, graduating with honors while Victor and Alexander watched the online ceremony. They moved from the penthouse to a house in the suburbs, still secure, but with a yard where Alexander could eventually play. Alexander continued growing, hitting milestones that filled photo albums and memory books. His first laugh at 6 months. Rolling over at 7, sitting up at 8. Each achievement felt monumental after the fragile beginning of his life. He's going to walk before we're ready, Patricia predicted when Alexander started pulling himself up on furniture at 9 months. She was right. At 10.5 months, Alexander took his first wobbly steps, from Elena's arms to Victor's, crossing the living room with determination that made both parents cry. That's my boy, Victor said, scooping Alexander up when he reached his father. Strong and stubborn, just like your mother. Just like both of us, Elena corrected, watching her husband and son with a fullness in her chest that felt almost painful. This was what she'd run from, what she'd been afraid to hope for. This ordinary, extraordinary life. Alexander's first birthday arrived with startling speed. They threw a small party, just family and close friends, in the backyard of their new house. Marcus gave Alexander a toy that was definitely too advanced for a 1-year-old. Patricia brought handmade clothes she'd been sewing in secret. Victor had commissioned a custom rocking horse that Alexander immediately tried to climb. As the party wound down and Alexander napped in his crib, exhausted from attention and cake, Elena and Victor sat on the back porch watching the sun set. "A year ago, I was 7 months pregnant and working at a diner," Elena said softly. "Convinced that hiding from you was the only way to keep our baby safe. And now look at us. Married, in the suburbs, with a 1-year-old who just destroyed a birthday cake. A year ago, I was consumed by revenge and territory and maintaining control," Victor added, "convinced that power was the only thing that mattered. And now my biggest concern is whether Alexander's going to inherit your stubbornness or mine." "Definitely both," Elena said with a laugh. "Poor kid doesn't stand a chance." Victor's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her close. "I've been thinking about what you said, about Alexander growing up protected from the darkness. And I realized we can't protect him from knowing that darkness exists. But we can show him how to choose light anyway, how to be strong without being violent, how to be powerful without being cruel." "You're already showing him that," Elena said, "every day, just by being here, by choosing us over everything else." "Choosing you was the easiest decision I've ever made," Victor said quietly. "Walking away from everything I built. That was harder. But watching Alexander take his first steps yesterday, seeing him laugh and play and grow into this amazing little person, that makes every sacrifice worth it." Alexander's cry came through the baby monitor, signaling the end of his nap. They both stood, moving toward the house together, partners in this grand adventure of parenthood. "Ready for year 2?" Victor asked as they climbed the stairs. "As ready as I'll ever be," Elena said. "Which is to say not at all, but we'll figure it out." "Together," Victor said. "Together," Elena agreed. They found Alexander standing in his crib, holding onto the rail with chubby hands, his face lighting up when he saw his parents. Victor lifted him out, settling their son on his hip, while Elena straightened the crib sheets. "What do you think, Alexander?" Victor asked seriously. "Think your parents are doing okay at this whole raising a child thing?" Alexander responded by grabbing Victor's nose and laughing, a sound of pure joy that filled the nursery and made both parents smile. "I think that's a yes," Elena said. As evening fell and they went through the familiar routine of dinner and bath and bedtime story, Elena felt the pieces of her life settle into place. Not perfectly. There were still challenges ahead, still moments of doubt and fear. But they were facing them together now, as a family. When Alexander finally fell asleep, Victor and Elena stood in the nursery doorway watching their son breathe, the same way they'd watched him in the NICU all those months ago. But there were no tubes or monitors now, just a healthy 1-year-old boy sleeping peacefully in a home filled with love. "Thank you," Victor said quietly. "For what?" "For running," he said. "For being brave enough to leave when you thought it was right. For giving me the chance to prove I could be better. For our son. For this life. For choosing to stay." Elena leaned her head against his shoulder. "Thank you for finding me, for fighting for us, for becoming the man I knew you could be." They stood in comfortable silence, watching Alexander sleep, and Elena realized something profound. She'd spent so long running from Victor's darkness that she'd almost missed the possibility of his light. Almost missed the chance to see what happened when a dangerous man found something worth being gentle for. Their journey hadn't been easy. It had been messy and terrifying and filled with impossible choices. But standing here now, with their son sleeping peacefully and their future stretching out before them, Elena wouldn't change a single moment, because every fear, every doubt, every moment of running had led them here. To this house in the suburbs, to this family they'd built from fragments and hope, to this life that was imperfect and beautiful and completely, utterly theirs. Victor pressed a kiss to her temple. "Come on, let's let him sleep." They left the nursery door cracked, the way they always did, and walked hand in hand down the hallway. Behind them, Alexander slept on, dreaming whatever dreams one-year-olds had. Ahead of them, the future waited, uncertain, challenging, but faced together. And Elena, who'd once thought the only way to protect her child was to run, finally understood the truth. The strongest protection wasn't distance or hiding or fear. It was love. Fierce, imperfect, unbreakable love. And they had that in abundance.